Hello, fellow ZBrushers, or ZBrushlings. Can I say ZBrushlings? Or is that a bad Star Wars reference? I'll stick to ZBrushers, but I'll take any suggestions in the comment section of YouTube. But welcome to anybody that's new to the ZBrush podcast, and thanks for all of you that have been tuning in and helping us keep pushing the podcast and all of your support. We thank you guys so much. Just want to make another quick announcement about ZBrushLive.com. So ZBrush Live is a site that we've created that is going to be launching on February 6th. And basically this site is a streaming portal that we have where we're going to be putting all kinds of content, including the ZBrush podcast, as well as our Z Plays, which is a separate show that we do where we sit with artists that work in game development, that work on the concept art and creating the actual assets for the game. And we sit down and play the game with them, so it's a great way to introduce you to a new up-and-coming game, as well as talking about the art and all of the creative side that goes into developing a great game. So we've done Z-Play episodes with artists from Fallout 4, as well as the new, most recent Doom, and Final Fantasy 15. So check those out. You can watch the replays on YouTube, on our YouTube page, which is ZBrush at Pixologic. And we'll be continuing to do more on Twitch, streaming those live. Up and coming, you'll get more information, of course, on ZBrushLive.com. And you can find us on Twitch. Just search for Pixologic, and you'll be able to like, subscribe, and follow all of our content to come. And of course, if you like the Z-Plays, you like our ZBrush podcast, make sure to subscribe and like all of our stuff on YouTube as well as Twitch, just to help keep us motivated and help keep us energized to create new content for all of you. And of course, we always appreciate feedback. You can post comments in the YouTube section, which we definitely check. And we appreciate everyone who has been helping support us and help share this with the community. So this is podcast number 5 with Jay Mattis, or was it Mattis? I don't know if I ever got the actual pronunciation. I'm so sorry, Jay. Jay Mattis and Timothy Rapp. So these two guys started a company called High Horse Entertainment. And they're in development for their first game, something called Disc Jam. And Disc Jam is still in beta, which you can head to their website, highhorseentertainment.com, to check it out and find out all about the game. But these two collectively have over 20 years of experience professionally in the gaming industry, and they've worked on all kinds of AAA titles, some of the most popular to date, including most of the Call of Duties, Call of Duty World at War, Black Ops 1 and 2, Guitar Hero, and there's definitely more. But the point is that with their experience, these two broke off and started their own company. And just these two guys are working on this game called Disc Jam, which is incredible that they're able to achieve such great results, which you'll find out in the podcast. And honestly, it was such an honor and a pleasure. And I was so interested to hear about their previous experience, not to mention how they've been able to easily develop a game like this between two people. And one of the great things about this for us talking with them is they use ZBrush in all of their asset development creation as far as concept and final game assets. And so they're doing everything in ZBrush, modeling, texturing, sending it right over to Game Engine, and able to implement all these things very, very quickly. And so this podcast is about these guys talking about that experience and talking about their workflow and how they go about applying all these things and how that experience has helped them get to where they are. So incredibly popular game right now, Disc Jam. If you haven't heard of it, check it out. It's amazing. And also one of the great benefits of hearing these guys talk about it, these two are actually going to be part of our Twitch streaming activity. So these two are actually going to be streaming live on Twitch February 9th, 16th, and 23rd. So don't miss it, and check out ZBrushLive.com. On February 6th, we will be releasing more information on that. But, you know, these two are kind of broadly discussing the topic. But if you really want to see how they implement ZBrush and what the techniques and what the workflows and what features they're using, and what's so awesome about this game is that they have different kinds of elements that would require different modeling techniques. So they have some organic stuff. They have characters that they're obviously sculpting in ZBrush, which is the organic approach. But they also have this court. It's kind of a combination of dodgeball meets Mario Tennis. And it reminded me a lot of the original Tron Disc Wars. There was a part in the game where you could throw discs. So they actually have this disc, but the core elements as well as the disc are more hard surface. So these guys are going to be discussing all of the different applications of using ZBrush features in an organic way, not to mention mechanical, which is very different and requires different maps or different techniques. So all that stuff is going to be outlined in that process. So if you're interested in getting into the gaming industry as an artist or as a developer on the back end, this is definitely going to be something that you don't want to miss. So head over to ZBrushLive.com February 6th. We're going to be announcing all that stuff. And these two are going to be streaming multiple times. So you'll get a chance to check it out live, and we'll also, of course, be replaying that stuff. So we all hope you enjoy podcast number 5 with Jay Mattis and Timothy Rapp from High Horse Entertainment. Oh, that's loud?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I don't even know when I did that. When did I do that?
Like 2 seconds ago.
Okay.
It's not even that it's the mic, it's those springs in the stand.
Oh, it shakes it and then it like reverberates through.
Other than that.
Okay.
When we do our Twitch stream, occasionally we'll do it on site, and we have a little coffee table at my place, and so we'll put our just a little blue Yeti microphone right in front of us all. Nobody remembers, and so like we're always putting our phone on the thing or setting the controller down.
It's become such a common format to record stuff and just do live, whether it's Twitch or Google Hangouts or whatever. So I've built like this tolerance to like shitty recordings, like bad recordings, but it's still worth listening to. So you're like, it doesn't matter. Which I feel like it didn't used to be.
Well, we used to write a lot of we used to do blog posts about our latest updates, and we do pretty traditional stuff like, hey, here's what's in the patch now, and it's time consuming. You want to put pictures in the media, you want to make sure you make sure all the copy is good to live on the internet forever, and do all that stuff. Now it's like we did our first Twitch dev stream, however long ago, it's months ago we did it, and it's like we just covered everything just by speaking plainly on a microphone. Like that just covered so much more time.
Yeah.
And that's people can reference that on the internet later. Like it's just so much faster. So no more dev blogs.
It's interesting too because we were talking about like being 30 and being sort of
big 3
already in a generation that's not quite as in touch. And it's like, for me personally, having all the like VODs and all the other things that you can like watch of like, oh, we just covered this on our dev stream. I'm like, dude, I don't want to like skim through like 40 minutes of video to find the like one question that I had. I want to read it. And it's like no one else seems to agree with that. Is the problem. It's like everyone else is like, well, like, is there some sort of like, do you just have a video on demand or something I could watch? It's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. It's like I don't know why I'm writing anything anymore. It's like we obsess over the copy and we're a lot more just colloquial and casual when we just speak into a dev stream, and that seems to be all anyone wants. So it's like, well,
if that's what they want, I mean, I guess it's easier in that way. In that sense, there's less pressure because you can just kind of just go through it, and people, I guess, are willing to do it. But like we were just talking about it outside, like there's that generation now that Kingsley talks about watching games on Twitch all the time. Like I don't get it because like you guys are saying, like we just don't have time. And the only thing that I find that I do that I'll take time to watch is I'll watch video game walkthroughs because like the older I get, the less time I have to play games, the more time I spend on artwork and work. And I'll go through like I just watched it the second time through. You guys play Firewatch?
I just started the beginning of it.
Yeah, okay.
I have no time.
It's it's I don't know how you felt about it so far, but it's amazing. It's a very cool story, very cool way to tell a story. And it's as far as gameplay goes, I mean, as far as like your game, it's not on that level, but it's a great way to pull somebody in.
Yeah. I see it described a lot as like the sort of best example of like a walking simulator, that new genre of like you don't do all that much, but you sort of wander around and you take it in. And I never really understood that genre, to be honest.
Yeah.
But like playing the intro to that, I get it. Like when it's done right and like that's what it's supposed to be of like you're immersed and it's like it's enough to just sort of be told the story that's unfolding and to not necessarily be challenged by the game because you're not, it's like that's a very old school attitude, I think, right? It's that like you want to be competitive about it. You want to either be challenging other people or you want to be challenged by the game. And so it's like the whole idea of exploring these games and just like being told a story that has light interaction, where it's like, that's, I think, a more interesting balance of like than the Hollywood blockbuster, I'm trying to be an interactive movie thing, right?
Yeah.
Of just like, here's a better way to tell a story that's much longer than a movie and may not make an interesting movie.
Right.
But when you've got sort of these light interaction elements and maybe you're making decisions that are interesting, that like, that's enough.
I look at it as like there's sometimes I want to play a game that it has a lot of immersive gameplay and interaction. Of course, like, I'll still play like games I'm playing right now. I just finished The Last Guardian. I'm still obsessed over Battlefield 1 because I'm getting older, so apparently as you get older, you start to get interested in World War I and World War II. So it's like that's hitting right now. I think I'm a little bit ahead of the curve on that, but I'm so into it, and I've been reading a lot, and watching a lot on World War I. But have you guys played it?
Not yet.
I haven't gotten a chance yet.
I just like recently bought it, and I was like, nice, and that's just been sitting there. I haven't touched anything.
Yeah.
The thing, I mean, we all get into this.
Everything in the last year is shrink wrapped in a stack.
I mean, you guys I want to talk about your background. That you guys work at Treyarch, and you guys both worked on Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Multiple Call of Duties. And my thing I used to be really big into Call of Duty. World at War was a big one for me. But since I've kind of given up on the whole like multiplayer, like fast-paced shooter, I like more of an immersive story, and a reason to keep playing, and not just like run around, die, or get 24 kills to get that nuke, which was cool at the time. But like Battlefield 1, Michael and I talk about it all the time. It's the way they have their classes set up. The weapons, there's no real outside of regular modifications. You can control your zoom. You can control your skin, but it's very simple. The weapons were much simpler of the time. So it really comes down to the physics, which is the arcing, the distance, the proper range.
Like the bullets falling off.
Yeah, because like
stuff,
in Call of Duty, you could technically take like an assault rifle and use that as a sniper if you're really good.
It's a laser beam.
Exactly. So with this, it's like like Michael and I were talking about it. Like I've caught myself in times where you can see your bullet arcing and your bullet dropping. You can see the tail end of the light stream going down. So like, there's times where I'll zone out and I'll be like, one time there's like, I spent like, I swear, like 30, 40 minutes and I had been shooting at planes for like 40 minutes and I had to stop and I was like, dude, people are probably looking at me and they're like, who's this guy camped out in a bush, like shooting at this biplane? Like, it's so silly, but
it makes it the greatest, like just the greatest little clip videos. Like, there's so much good stuff that comes out of those Frostbite games. That's the name of the engine, right?
Yeah.
Frostbite?
Yeah.
Like there's so much cool stuff that happens.
Those are fun to watch. And I feel like that's the kind of stuff I'd probably miss out on watching people play games on Twitch. But
well, that never happens, right? When you're watching a stream,
right.
Like it's just the same thing that happens when you play for 2 hours. What happens when this guy plays for 2 hours?
Yeah.
Right. But you get the whole world of people playing, and then every now and then, so I get most of that stuff off of like Reddit or something, where it's like this amazing thing came out today because somebody, carefully edited and clipped together this amazing sequence. Like that's kind of like, that's more interesting to me than like I'm gonna watch this guy play Battlefield because he's really good.
Right.
Like, if I can't, the only game that I was like I'm gonna watch this right now has been like Hearthstone because I don't have enough time.
I haven't watched.
I don't have enough time to digest all this friggin' meta that comes out every month and they patch it and there's 10 more new things you get. I don't care to learn all that. I don't care to deck craft and do all the like, well, you know what, if you combine there's too much investment to a thing that I play when I'm walking my dog. So it's but I love to watch that game because the situational plays people make is like thought processes that I don't have any investment in. So I'm like, oh wow, like I never thought like it's so counterintuitive to me you would play this here because like when you think about it, here's why he's doing that. It's a very good way to sort of like digest high level stuff because there's no real like Twitch skill to it. It's purely the skill is all in your theory and all in your strategy. So it's like you can get 100% of his skill just by watching him. And there's no other games out there that kind of do that.
That's a good point. Like it because each one of us, when you play a game, we all kind of have our own like subconscious way of going about things. Like some people just run and gun, some people, depending on what kind of game, if it's a shooter or not. But there is something about the little subtle, what somebody does in a certain situation that might be different than somebody else that you pick up on. And that was something with like Call of Duty, for example. I used to play so often, like I would just go through and but I had a certain, like, there was a method to the madness of where I would run around and how I would go through, and you'd figure out how to, you come up on somebody on a corner, and my instinct is to lay down on the ground because immediately they lose their train of sight, and I'm like, and then I go for a headshot. That's like my go-to move. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest value I got from watching people play Call of Duty was just, first of all, that's what made me realize that for the most part, aside from the Twitch skill that's sort of obvious, is that it's like all about knowing the maps cold.
Oh, for sure.
Knowing the spawns, knowing where people are going to be, like, and running that sort of outside loop. And everyone's got like this sort of slightly different outside loop. And this is what I got a lot watching people online and watching people, frankly, at Treyarch when we were playing.
Like the outside loop, you mean like sort of trying to hit all the spawn points?
Yeah, there's like, when I would watch like really good people in the office and online play, they have this like route that they run. And it's like they're like, it's very specific to them and how they do it and like per map. And they just sort of like, they spawn, they know exactly where they're going. They're heading to the place. They're going to check these 3 spots. They're going to shoot. They're going to go over here, check the guy there, and they just have the spots that they check.
I would always like why I love Call of Duty and why it was like my favorite FPS franchise ever probably is because of how much like how little cerebral there was for me ever in it. Just pure, just like instinct and and I had my same laps. I had my paths and I had a lot of that.
Yeah.
But I never got to the point of like the guys like Scronce and like Miles and all those guys where it's like they knew the spawns, they knew where the waves would come from, they knew like shoot behind there because there's like the guy going to be here, and like I would just be like, I know kind of what to expect from things. I'm gonna kind of just like go by the gut and just like rush here, be careful around that areas, be aggressive around these areas, and just like and like I consider myself like with that 2 million horn like one of the top guys in the studio. Like these guys I'm talking about, like, we would all like. We would go like toe to toe, and any one of us would win that round. Like there's only like a select one, I mean like less than 3 guys I would say are definitely better than me in all of Treyarch. Yeah, and like every single one of them though understood every single piece of geo. You know you can make this shot from here. It's like, dude, like
that's
whatever.
Great.
You know what I mean?
That's awesome though. I always wonder if you guys have that. I mean, there's an extra little edge because you're behind you're going through and building that stuff.
Oh, but once it goes out to the wild, none of us compete.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Once it goes out, our QA maybe, because QA is always just the best in the studio. Doesn't matter what game, but like,
do you have to qualify for that? By the way, is there like a competition to like figure out?
We would do in-house competitions a lot. That was one thing that was really cool. Like they made it like kind of like a requirement that you had to play the game once a week. That's awesome. Then it turned into like a tournament, and then it became like
that's like a 12-year
tournament without dream. Yeah, it really was. Like, then it became like a tournament without QA. Like QA is not allowed. Yeah, it was just like it was so unfair.
Like we're just all gonna lose. So like, let's see of the people who aren't QA.
It's like when you're before you get started, and then like when you play with like your older cousin or somebody that's like got experience. Like I remember like my younger cousin wanted to challenge me in Call of Duty. And I knew that he probably was maybe naturally a little bit better, but like just because I knew enough, I had enough street smarts to figure out how to like work around it and like plant like dynamite or something in a certain place to like lead him into traps. That's how I would beat him.
I mean, Jay and I talk about this a lot. You know, growing up, you're playing your friend. I think it's probably true for everyone in this room. It's like if you're like this into games at this stage in your life, you were probably the guy in your neighborhood or in your group of friends who just beat everybody. Like I grew up never losing, and it was like all I ever wanted.
That's so true.
All I ever wanted was like more competition for PvP games. Like Bond came out when I was young, and I remember like no one in my entire neighborhood could beat me at Bond, and it was like
on the 64.
Yeah. I'm like, come to my house right now and play me in this.
I was so hungry for like good intense games. Like,
I'll loan this to you.
Yeah, and then I went off to college, and there was like. I had a few more people who like they were the best, and like we would all like be like. Then it was like insane competition because all of us were so good. Yeah. And then like now it's like with where PvP gaming is now, it's like the best in the world are so far above me in anything. Like it's like not even a question. Yeah. So like it's just funny that that in large part motivated what I wanted to get into work wise. Like I knew I was like PvP games against people is like the only thing, and that came about like when we were at like gaming age. That came about like, we were like in like. Junior high, maybe even high school. Like,
our
like
generation. It was the first. Like I think
plugging in your phone and like playing Doom versus somebody. I was like, that person is across the street now, and we're both shooting the same monsters together. I was like, this is the most amazing thing that ever happened.
Yeah, it's like this is the future.
Yeah,
right.
And that's all I ever wanted to get involved. That's all I ever wanted to do. It's like I went to school because of that. I went to like everything was about that.
So that was the thing that
that's just the most primal thing I think for competitive people though, right? It's like design me some fictional scenario in which we can find out which one of us comes out on top.
Yeah,
right?
no,
and it's
that's
like
so
and they're just having like 100 different fictional scenarios. It's like, okay, well, what if this? And you're like, okay, cool, let's play this.
A buddy, my old boss from Neversoft, because my first job was Call of Duty 3 at Treyarch, but I was working for like Activision Central Tech, so they kind of were firefighters that went from like game to game.
Okay.
So after Call of Duty 3 shipped, they wanted me over at Neversoft for Tony Hawk and Guitar Hero. And so my boss just to go back to what we were saying a moment ago, like my boss at Neversoft sees our game Disc Jam and is like, that's the most Tim Rapp game I've ever seen in my life. Because it's just like, it's two guys with a net and goals behind them.
Yeah.
Get the thing behind them.
Yeah.
It's the most it's just such a distilled version of competitive games.
Right.
It's like that is the most you game ever.
Well, I mean, trust me, I could talk about games. This could go 5 hours if we kept going with this.
Right.
But like, I do want to get to that aspect of kind of what kind of put you guys in that direction. Because you guys, we really wanted to talk to you guys because, first of all, you're the first, team of artists or team of people that work with development. Because we talk to a lot of people that are ZBrush artists and they work in the creative side. But you guys are kind of doing a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. So for the listeners that don't know kind of where you guys came from, you guys both worked at Treyarch. For you guys have say 20 years of experience combined.
Yeah.
So what's kind of your background? What led you into wanting to develop High Horse Entertainment and get
that might be actually interesting because both of us have pretty non-traditional paths into Treyarch. Like we both found ourselves with zero game experience on like the biggest franchise in the world in different ways.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I can talk about my story a little bit. Like I was, like I just said a moment ago, I was super about, I knew what I wanted a long time ago. I knew I need to be making multiplayer video games. Like the only thing I'm interested in, that's it. Mm-hmm. So, that like led me to, I never programmed a thing in my life, but a teacher said, programming is like definitely the best way to get in. So like you should learn that now. So I took, CS in high school when they only had like 3 or 4 kids in the class, and that helped me learn programming earlier than most people did in my generation, which led to me being kind of ahead of the people in my peers in college. So I was kind of like,
they was in high school. They were
like they offered APCS when like the school was like just introduced it. Like my high school was one of the first to ever offer APCS in the state. So it was a very
in Nevada.
This was actually I went to a boarding school in New Jersey.
Okay.
So like
which one?
Lawrenceville.
Oh, I have a friend that went to a boarding school. And
I'm sure we played them.
Yeah, maybe.
I can't remember. It's a small world. Like small. It was that was a random occurrence, even getting up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like my teacher wrote our textbook, and he to this day is like still in touch with me. Like, oh, how's like things going? Because it was all about just video games. I was like, I want to make video games. He's like, well, you should do this. I was like, all right, done. Sure. What is it? Like that's kind of that led me to getting an engineering in college, and just by having like that 1 year of APCS. Meant that I was ahead of all the things that I was doing at Vanderbilt. So like then by the time I graduated school, programming is just like it's a job factory. There was a job waiting for me the next day. Mm-hmm. It wasn't in video games because I had zero experience in video games, but I knew that was the eventual goal.
Yeah.
So for that first year, I was just doing network applications for a casino company back home. So it was just like a lot of these 24-hour, hey, this just happened on the floor, relay this information, or hey, there's a lot of just online applications that were all just network communication. So I learned network engineering very, very fortuitously, just was able to be in the right place that was going to lead me into games. Because I was still trying to get better at games, doing a lot of practice, ZBrushing, things like that, because ZBrush was like just starting to come out.
Yeah.
And like just
so
trying to be
ZBrush 2-ish?
It was old.
Yeah.
It was way back when. It was rough going there for me.
Yeah, I started in high school, and I want to say it was ZBrush 2 or 2, like in between 2 and 3.
So yeah, like, it was just a lot of just learning what I could, knowing I wanted to make games. And then eventually I got an interview because Activision was hiring for network people. They were making Call of Duty 3. And keep in mind, Call of Duty 3, when it came out, this was still in the time when there was no such thing as an MP-only game. There was the campaign games, and then there was MP tacked on of pretty much every game out there. Mm-hmm. There was games like Quake, sure, and the Quake 3 had already come out at that point, and Quake 3...
Which that wasn't a console.
Definitely wasn't console, and actually I think they brought it to console, but didn't do very well. Same Unreal Tournament got brought to console, didn't do very well. It arguably killed the franchise. But like, the thing that was curious about it was that you still had tiny teams doing MP for games. Mm-hmm. And that was my first game, was Call of Duty 3. I mean, we were probably 5-6 people, including production. Like, and artists were all single player. And they would send us some art when we needed it, but it was really just a small group of programmers, 1 or 2 prod, and then we had QA access, of course. That was it for the entire MP team. So being on that was awesome because they're like, we need a network guy. And I was like, all right, well, tell us what you do for day-to-day living. I was like, all right, I write these applications. I handle these kind of messaging. I just essentially network engineering is kind of the same thing everywhere. It's like marshaling data from one endpoint to another and doing so in an efficient way. And if you understand that stuff, we could use you. And so that's how I got my entry into like, it's like a year prior to this, Call of Duty was like the best thing I've ever seen in games. I was like, I loved Quake already. This is a game built in World War II on the Quake engine. I was showing my friends, it's my senior year of college, like this game, none of my friends in college even played video games. I was like, this game has raised the bar for PC games. Is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And then like less than a year later, by so much luck, I was working on the next generation of it. I was working on Call of Duty 3 for Xbox 360 and PlayStation 2 and 3. And I was just like, this is such a dream come true because this is like, if I could pick anything, it'd be this. And then from that point on, it was just a matter of like learning on your feet. And luckily I was able to pick up enough stuff over the course of my 10 years that, you know, like by the end, I'm pretty confident about my breadth of understanding of what goes into a game, kind of at all levels.
Seems like, I mean, for you, it's like those like fortuitous like events that happen, you kind of just set yourself up to be like, you can pretty much pick anything up because you taught yourself how to do all these things and you're intrigued and interested enough to find out on your own.
It's a lot of right place, right time.
Yeah.
But I would have clearly fell on my face if I wasn't so hungry and like preparing for it. You know what I mean? I was like, when I get asked to do a game, I want to be ready for that opportunity. You know, a lot of it was like just having the thing that's like easy about it is knowing what you want to do. Not a lot of people have
Absolutely.
that. You know, like having that understanding at an early age helped me. I mean, it led to everything.
It's such a big deal to know.
It is. I mean, like because we have very different paths,
Yeah.
but I think that's the one thing that we definitely have in common, which is that, and this is what we talked about actually when we met at Treyarch, which is just that that desire of like we're gonna put in our like 18-hour day and then we'll still go home and like read the ZBrush blog or whatever, right? It's like we're gonna be reading people's blogs about their new workflow for such and such because A, we love it, and B, we just want to be better. We want to read more about it. And so, you know, I would come in and something had just been posted about something and like he was the guy that I was going to talk to about it because he was going to be the only one that also read it. And
Dynamesh was like that. When Dynamesh came out, I was just like game changer.
So you guys like jumped right into it right away?
Oh yeah. Well, because like, you know, we were always kind of talking about production and like workflow, and it was always like he's just said, like we would be crunching so hard on these games because you know Call of Duty's big game, we crunch really hard on these projects, and like after 16, 17 hours of working it, we would both go home and tinker with our own little projects because like that's just like the level of absurd obsession. And like I remember when Dynamesh came out, I was like, dude, look at this. And then it's just like this ball of clay that you can then like, because he understands the technical side of things. You know, like I do more of like just the hands-on art, but explaining to him like, look, I can get dynamic resolution on this geo. He's like, what? And then like, you know, then obviously.
Did you use sculptors at all before that? Or like any like dynamic tessellation sculpting?
No. Dynamesh was the first.
Because like we had just acquired sculptors. It was when we kind of merged, and then that was when we released Dynamesh. And I remember.
Might have. Had you?
I'd played with it a little bit. I played with it a little bit, but not to the point where I actually really appreciated that technology though.
Yeah, and if you had been using ZBrush, there was a difference, just like the level of resolution that you could get to. You know, the Dynamesh has that you can't quite get to with sculptors, just that tertiary, that fine level.
Yeah.
That like, you know, we all kind of nerd over. You know,
and I think like a lot of what we're doing now comes from we have like the same unhealthy obsession with like, can we cut this whole part of a pipeline out? Right, like we love that and like live for that aspect of like, can I cut 8 hours of my workflow out because I do this like 100 times a year? So can I get rid of this? Because like, imagine what we could do if we could do that, right?
Well,
and it's like you do that enough times and like you just rip.
Yeah. We were talking about this in the lobby about, you know, like I have students and I remember being a student in like having that chip on your shoulder and that thing where like, you know, I stayed up 18 hours last night working on this project and you're just obsessing over it and everybody compares like how little sleep they get. But like as you get older, and especially because you guys have professional experience and you have deadlines and you have pipelines that you have to fit into. So it's all about maximizing your time. So it's like how can I not spend 10 hours a day working on this one sculpt, and how can I just streamline this make it?
That's the biggest difference between college life and professional life right there. It's like before you're like, dude, you worked on that 20 hours last night. It's amazing. And now it's like he'll Slack me something and I'll like look at the image and be like, dude, this looks sick. He's like 20 minutes.
20 hours, 20 minutes.
Well, that's the thing. It's like
what you're impressed by is completely reversed timeline.
it's funny
so
too because
true.
like when you hear stuff when you're in school, you hear stuff like like time is the only thing that matters, and it's like it's kind of always just beats you down. It's like I want to have infinite time to make this what I want it to make.
Yeah.
It should look as good as I want it to look. I don't care about time.
Right.
And it's always just like something that's in the back of my mind is like that sucks, that truth. But it's like you just can't deny the fact that there's only, especially since we started this business, it's only time. There's no other currency on earth in this production. Like it's only time.
Yeah.
Whether it's like you're dealing with some accountant who or it doesn't matter. It's just only time. What's the amount of time investment that gets us to the finish line appropriately? That's it. And like maximize the quality, of course, because that's always the goal. But if you're not time focused, like you'll be there spinning your wheels, or things are going to slip, or things you really wanted to do aren't going to make it to because you decided to shift production in some other little way. It's just time. So like when things like, I love showing him stuff with the ZBrush tools because it's like, the whole thing I like to do now is just like, let's get it in games like failing fast. Failing fast is probably the thing that we do best. It's like you need to, when you get two people, you can't afford to not to spend time on something that is like R&D.
Yeah.
Like we need to have a pretty clear idea of what's going to work in map, not just functionally, but visually. Like, is this going to look stupid? It's
Right.
got to look good. So like getting to that endpoint of like, no, we got to change this drastically, or that actually kind of works. We got to get that done quick because, asset pipelines, as I'm sure you guys are all aware, like asset pipelines can be pretty time consuming. So
Yeah.
you can find yourself on the other end of a pretty long, whether it's a character or even something in the environment. You spend all this time getting it ready and okay, now it's production level. I bake some really nice maps. It like lights well, it looks good, like it'll ship. Like, oh, do you know what? It completely breaks the angle in doubles. And so it's like you got to kind of fail. It's not just like block out meshes.
So it's about just as quickly as you can get in there just to visualize it, to get that feedback, and then make any adjustments that you
and it
that
could
you
be
need.
a prop on a character, like a swinging axe or something like that.
Yeah.
Or it could be so like we love just the fact that oftentimes, and our camera's pretty far back, and oftentimes we don't even need to do hand retopology. And like fine artists would kill us for that, because if you really are going to be showing the model up close, it doesn't take you that much time nowadays to just go in and hand retope the entire thing.
Yeah.
That's just kind of, you can spare that time. But the fact that I can 5-click export and auto UV, auto retope, clean up some artifacts here and there, and have a game character in the same hour or two that I showed him a concept, that kind of production speed has never been done before.
Especially because
Now it's kind of common.
Yeah.
having that first pass in there is so important in terms of, again, the pipeline, right? Because it's like we're two people and it's like, hey, we got to make some big changes. We don't have a ton of time.
Yeah.
And everything that we do comes in super hot. So we're just like, all right, you know what? Like, do this. Like, let's a one-click button get it in game right now. And then I'm already working on it.
Yeah.
When he's deciding which stages of those he's actually going to do manually and what's worth doing, right? And I think plenty of times there's things that we have full intention of still going through and doing manually and cleaning up, but yet it's in the game right
so
now.
you're kind of just
right?
like, we'll get to it eventually.
Well,
I mean,
also,
like,
we get
priorities change, right? So it's like
the feedback from the people, as we were saying earlier, the feedback from the people is always quite different than the feedback. Like what we find so heinous, they like don't either mention or notice
or even
sometimes
like
even like it.
right?
Sometimes.
And you're like, you like that?
Then
That's
there's times where it's like here's a good example. Like our second character was like, we had the anims already done. Like we'd done the full anim set was done onto the mannequin. I was like, all right, I'll use a mannequin for now. Let's get all the animation set up. Let's get the in-game character ready so like we can do the certain kind of throws and make sure she feels the right way. So I just basically took the mannequin, spray painted it, did a little face sculpt, and like did some block out armor and checked it in. I was like, let's just use this block out. Like I just legit spray painted this mannequin and made that the character. That was supposed to live for like a month at tops. And this is when we were in pre-alpha. So we knew we wanted 2 characters. We knew the gameplay was ready, so off we go. It's like let's have the contrast between the 2 characters and start balancing this gameplay design between the 2 of them. So she's still in there as is now.
Oh, really?
And it's awful. I mean, I get the most flack. I mean, we don't really get a lot of negative feedback, thankfully, but like the one thing we get hit on is like, what is with this character? It's the grossest thing. And it is like her skeleton, her like her elbows right here in the sculpt, but the bone is like right here. So she has like this like little like breaks right there. And her proportions are all wrong because it's a mannequin. It's not it's not a female character. It's a mannequin that just like I just like put an hourglass on and like checked in. Like everything is just so distorted and gross and like robotic because it's and it's like we have people who just do full posts on our Steam forums about like what is
that.
with this. I'm like, guys,
But you know what? It's like the whole mini giraffe on DirecTV thing. It's like if it gets buzz and people are talking about it, it's kind of interesting. Like it's not so bad.
And, yeah, I mean, and the thing is though, like that whole thing came about because we were coming from a background where like you polish everything to like beyond polish level before you let anyone see it.
Yeah.
And trying to make something with two guys indie style, it's all about just trying to get people involved and getting things tested early. And we're making a game that supports 4 players playing 2v2 and we can't test it because we're like 2 guys. So like getting other people in and playing with us and like iterating on that is fun for them, but it's really useful for us. We find things that we wouldn't find otherwise. And so being able to stand up the gameplay earlier with this character that like, you know, is not final quality.
Yeah.
But being able to hit that middle ground where like it was super fast for us and it's totally passable in terms of most people and how much they care, right? And then the people that do, like we hear about it.
Yeah.
But for, you know, every person that says something, there's probably 1,000 that don't. And we've been playing with it for months. She's great. We've gotten a ton of tweaks. And it's like, and because of the workflow, we can swap it out.
Right.
And it's like,
well,
we
and
lost
like
nothing.
In one thing I do want to get to is because there's a level of understanding that you guys have just from your experience professionally and kind of what brought you to this point. And for the listeners that don't know, I mean, you guys are one of the reasons why we're having on here is to talk about your ZBrush pipeline, of course, but also because you guys are going to be one of our representative teams on Twitch. You guys are going to be showing all this stuff. And we've got some videos. You guys have links and stuff that you want to show?
Well,
like,
yeah, I don't know if you
I'd like to I'd like to get to that in a minute, but like I kind of want to lay out for the people that are maybe interested in doing what you guys are doing, because you guys have the right mix of skills and experiences, and you guys are kind of like symbiotically working together. So Timothy, your experiences were kind of you were working with UI, a lot of like weapons kit development, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So when the UI was Jay mostly. I've had like the most lucky career in that. For some reason, I just dodged that UI bullet for like 10 years of my life, and it's 'cause like he'll tell you, man, it's rewarding work when they work well, but it's just very tedious and time consuming work UI. You know, when you do it well, it's like phenomenal. And Jay got to do some of the more exciting stuff because like he actually tore down and rewrote the entire Call of Duty UI from scratch, because the one they were working on was all the way back to Call of Duty 1 days, which was a super...
It was Quake 3 actually. So I mean,
Quake 3 is like,
and this is the thing,
UI.
like while Tim dodged the bullet, I just took it like head on. It was just like, I'm just gonna take this so that we can stop doing
like
this.
You couldn't even like change the menu on the fly. You had to like compile code to change menus.
Everything was laid out 640 by 480.
Okay. Oh, that's wow.
Like up until like Xbox 360 times.
And then you're going to upres to
until
what?
Black Ops 2.
So that was 360,
everything was
right?
laid out 640 by 480 in the Quake 3 UI system, and just like to give people an idea of like what that meant, right? Is like the way that you would lay out a button, for example, right? Like there was no concept of like a control like a button. It was just you would have like the visual states of like what it looked like normal and highlighted on, and you would just write like 3 separate images, and then they would just have really complicated like conditions as to when they'd be visible that like would be a button. It was
a nightmare.
But like there was no concept of like, oh, there's this thing, it's a button, it has states. Like it was all just like unrolled into like tons of different like crazy visibility statements. So it was like doing that, right, which is like a super static layout, and then everyone I'm sure knows Call of Duty, and you got like create a class, and there's a lot of UI involved in like
ton of
all the
stats,
different
as
stuff
far
that
as,
you
like,
can
custom menus and
customize and like
hierarchies
tabs and
and-
combat records and stats you want to look at.
Custom
And I
emblems.
mean,
So
as
Jay,
soon
that
as you
was
want things to move,
was that your responsibility? Was that something that you?
well, so in Black Ops 1, we had wager matches. That was the first thing, right? And wager matches were like at that time, what you would do in that game is you would earn in-game currency. So like with Modern Warfare 2, you would unlock things via level. Right. And then in Black Ops 1, we went this new route where you would earn in-game currency. And so you could sort of unlock things in any order. And so part of what we thought would be fun to do is if we did this like wager match mode where you could bet in-game currency on these sort of crazy, wacky game modes. So that was like mainly what I did was that ecosystem. And doing the sort of a lot of the live services and gameplay. So I did those game modes, like One in the Chamber, stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I did like the contract system, which was this like live dynamic challenge.
I remember
system.
contracts. Yeah.
So once you start getting into that stuff of like, oh, you need like there's a lot of dynamic UI there of stuff that's like gets fed in from
Call of Duty
live
probably
services.
has of all the multiplayer games that has some of the most intricate menus and it's all quick and
Remember
very
the stats from Black Ops 1 that got added too? With like all of a sudden you could track bar graphs or line graphs on every single thing. So like it became like, and this was all in the old system.
Yeah, and so you really at a certain point need things to move, right? You need things to be fluid. You need things to animate. And so one of the first things that I did there was I extended the system that we had to add animations. And because of how already complex the system was, it was just a nightmare. I mean, like once that was in, it was like debugging anything was impossible. There was no way to debug that.
Yeah.
So it was just for the next project, it was like, well, because I already had to do all this online services stuff and I was intimately familiar with all the reasons it was awful to then plug it into the UI, it was like, well, let's just like see what we can do if we had something that was a lot more dynamic. So so we tore it down and I built up something new for Black Ops 2, which was a huge challenge because it was something that we're doing from scratch. It was a major system and trying to build it while everyone's using it is a real challenge, especially when you only have about 2 years to like get it all done and right and have feature parity with everything we could do before, et cetera. But I think it worked out pretty well. I think all the studios across Call of Duty are now using it.
Well, and that was
well.
the time when Call of Duty was it didn't quite become the franchise like game every year kind of thing. And if I remember correctly, with Treyarch especially, like I was a huge fan of World at War. That was my favorite of that era. Of course, Modern Warfare is like in the same level for different reasons.
Yeah.
But it I guess you guys are kind of what all of that work, that back end work you guys are doing. You're setting it up so that it's changeable to do that every year, because if you're stuck with one platform, you have to keep working within those.
But you'd be so surprised how often it's like, hey guys, we just grinded our gears for a year and a half on a quick cycle. I mean, Activision turns games around quick, and it's like. You'd be surprised how often it's like, let's tear it all down.
Yeah,
and it's just
start
like,
over.
Yeah, for things like UI, you know what I mean? It's like I always loved how I never worked at IW, but I loved how their menus didn't change. Their UI certainly improved every game, like MW1, MW2, a huge jump. But like they definitely improved their UI. But if you look at all their old Call of Duty games, like the start game to end game flow barely ever changed at all, because it's like who cares, man? Like that's why you spend your time that way. So I mean, that's one of the things that's like you'd be surprised how often in a big production team, like let's get a bunch of artists and designers and let's get some UX people in here. Let's have a conversation. Like let's just change this UI all one more time.
Yeah,
it's like it's still going to be a creative class. You're still going to have rewards.
Also, I think like it's by far the most underestimated time sink. I mean, like
oh my god,
even in our game, which has
meticulous
like. No UI. I mean, like relative to many games.
Not an accident.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the focus. We don't even have a HUD. Right?
Yeah.
Everything is, which I love about our game, but we don't have it, right? Still, I would say like 80% of the engineering work still goes to UI because it's just like
presentation.
And there's just a million places where that stuff can go wrong.
Yeah.
And like that's where all your bugs are, especially in a multiplayer game where
Online,
like, if you're in a party, you're not in a party, you got invites, you got to jump, so it's
can
like,
of worms.
Yeah.
It's especially now, like games are getting more intricate with how you can work with your team, especially online. So I always wonder where those bugs you're saying, like where those. I guess it happens in the code when it's all connecting and pulling from the same things.
And there's things that you
pull your
can't
network
predict,
cable.
right? Yeah,
that's
the stuff that you can't predict. Is like, well, okay, I'm in a party, but now this guy in this random sequence of events while you're transitioning between menus and doing this stuff, some guy you lose connection to him because it's the internet. Right?
Yeah.
Internet doesn't always work. And then like, well, does the game still work? Right. And trying to find all those
this menu waits for everybody to select something.
I mean, this is again one of the reasons that like we're super happy to have had the player base that we've had to help us test. Because I mean, like even the two of us, if we spent a month, we probably wouldn't find this stuff because it's like you just don't think of it.
But it's been exciting. Like we launched our pre-alpha with no audience, of course. And, some people picked it up and we had like a Steam greenlight that went pretty fast. And it was, without the benefits of a, marketing team or a publisher or a sexy trailer. Like, we really just were like, hey guys, there's this game. Hopefully some of you are interested in it. And at first it was like, there was probably like 8 to 10 people who really cared about it, and that was awesome because we had 8 to 10 people to help us test at any given time, whether it's a gameplay, blah blah blah. Now it's like, I think we have over 800 concurrent players playing like as we speak, which is amazing.
That's amazing.
It's amazing. Especially in this day, and the game's in beta, we don't have any promotion of any kind that didn't come from me and Jay's like Twitter account. Like, we don't have any sort of like
social
paid
media,
for. We have our social media as it's like for the company.
You're not paying for advertising.
No,
we have
it's
no
100%
budget
word of
or
mouth,
like-
organic growth. We don't have a marketing budget to spend the
That's the
5
great thing about
figures, 6
today's world.
figures.
You
It's great.
don't need it if you're doing the right things and you're putting in the right places.
I don't even know if that's true, to be honest. Like,
Really?
I don't know. I honestly don't have like.
Are you like hitting that right now, or you're like, do
No,
we need
I mean,
to start?
I know we'll be fine
Well,
because
yeah, I
like the
think
game's
we'll-
coming out pretty soon, and we have a nice size audience, thank God. But like, there's a lot of games out there who are fun games that don't have any audience.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that the
like-
whole time that we were working on this, right? Because that was always the question for us: is we
No
were
idea
both
about reach.
like backroom engineer guys. We were like behind the
marketers.
scenes doing game dev, but
Yeah.
we have a whole other building at Activision that handles marketing
Awareness.
and publishing
Sure,
and
yeah.
all that, and they have obviously huge budgets. So we didn't really have any concept of what the right avenue is for two guys who are trying to get a game out there. We had no idea what how uphill a battle it was going to be, whether we were doing the right messaging, whether we were even hitting the right channels. But the thing about it was that like, we figured it out, and I think we've gotten okay at it, and we're finding our way through. And I think Disc Jam, I'm pretty happy with our player base, but we see everyone along the way while we're doing this, and we're seeing games that we're like, man, this game's really good. And you can go on, for example, like SteamSpy.com, and you can go and you can actually look at like how many players these games have and what their concurrency is, and we're like, this game's good, and like no one's playing it. And multiplayer games are really tricky, right? Because if you come out and no one's playing it, you're done, right? Like, people download it, they hit
relies
find match,
totally
they don't
on
find a
that.
match, you're
Yeah.
never
If you
opening it
jump
again.
in and you're
So-
like, oh, look for a match, find nothing.
Right.
It's an instant uninstall.
Well,
So
okay,
it-
funnily
the
enough,
discoverability
You're like,
is over.
and the review is game's great, but it's dead, no one's playing.
Yeah.
And that's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because you can't rebuild that momentum. So
Right.
It's tricky.
I tried to go back and play Call of Duty 3 on my 360. I just pulled it out a while ago, and I was like, man,
Seriously?
Yeah, I was like, I just kind of want to check it out and
There's
see.
a room up every night. I still do that
I
'cause
tried
it's
to
my
get
first game.
I
so
waited
still
for a
pop it.
while and I couldn't get it. I was so bummed because I was like having all these like nostalgic moments. Like, oh yeah, I remember. Like, I kind of want to
Like,
check
I
this
love
out
that,
again.
Like one of the weapons in there, the five bullet M4 Garand with the clip.
Oh,
is
yeah.
like one of my favorite guns. And some of the maps in there I love a lot too. And had the war game mode.
They were great maps.
The war game mode that was like the tug of war where you had to like capture all the way
yes.
up. I
I
love that
forgot
game
about
mode.
that.
Yeah, I don't know why they got rid of it, but I
That
love
was a
that
good
game
one.
mode.
I wish that's the one thing that's the only thing with multiplayer games is like there's a certain lifespan unless it becomes like a Counter-Strike that Kingsley, Kingsley and I are gonna have a battle. He's gonna play on PC. I'm gonna play on console. He just thinks he's gonna destroy me. But
Of course he is.
I'm gonna do the same thing I did to my cousin. I'm gonna have to work around and try and cheat the system somehow. I'm gonna have to avoid his perfectly accurate
You're going
mouse.
to have to outsmart him.
Yeah, that's the only possible scenario that this could turn out in my favor. But I'll get destroyed no matter what. It's like I've already submitted to it. But I wondered. So from that experience at Treyarch, all this stuff that you guys learned, all of those lessons, the pros and cons. Like you mentioned something about like more about text rendering than anybody should know.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff is leading up to you guys starting High Horse Entertainment, which I do want to ask you, is that like get off of your high horse and like
There's a lot
make
of little
cool art?
there's a lot of little cute
Or, like,
things.
we're
in there.
on a high horse.
There's a lot of cute stuff
there are a lot
in
of
there.
layers to it.
It's just something that when we were kicking around ideas. Well, first of all, no names are available. Every guy who's ever started a company, if it's got a cute name,
got it locked down.
it's already been
It's done.
So we were kicking around ideas. It's kind of like almost like a tongue-in-cheek reminder to ourselves because like it's really easy to sort of. One thing we always kind of laugh about games is like, it doesn't matter if you're like a game consumer or a game developer or just a person who's in the production of games or doesn't even play games. Everyone's got this like incredible authority about how they talk about games.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's the most subjective thing in the world.
Everyone is so sure that they've got all the answers.
Yeah, and it's like,
Yeah,
and he can be a
in the
student.
industry that's so young, and a
So
game today is
subjective.
not recognizable.
You mean
compared
as
to
far
a
as like
game.
from your gamers perspective, or from the artists or the people that you know behind it?
Everyone,
Everyone.
like people who
Everyone.
like you don't understand, like first person shooters need to be this way.
Right.
Like, I'm sure he could tell us right now about why Counter-Strike is the way to do it.
Honestly.
and Unreal Tournament is not the way to
At
do
least
it.
not as a-
I've had we've been in negotiations with like companies who like where they go I don't they say like, hey, well, I think that there's only one kind of first person shooters this way.
Right.
And like that's like the most insane thing to me, because it's like, listen, this is the most subjective thing in the world. Like I have what I gravitate to in a Quake 3 style first person shooter.
Yeah.
Like Unreal Tournament 1 was probably my favorite FPS of all time. Like
Yeah.
and like because of how the weapons were and the maps were and like the Twitch feedback on my mouse and keyboard, I loved that.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty far removal from even like Unreal Tournament 3 is like a huge departure from that, 'cause they went to the whole console space. It's like, and Halo in its own other way, like a layman would say all these games are the same, and yet they're so incredibly different how you spend your time within them.
Yeah.
How could you sit there and tell me that like this is the way to do first person shooters? That's a ridiculous thing to think.
I think there's a human nature aspect of this idea that we ally ourselves with like a certain tribe. It's like if you're a Halo person, like you just like Halo and you like to like, you know, like super jumps sniper people.
But people
you know,
seem to forgive that in other forms of entertainment medium. Like people understand like
That's
this
true.
TV show's not for me.
Yeah.
This
Right.
kind of music's not for me. That movie, that's not my kind of movie.
Right, like,
but like
no one
with video
watches
games
a-
is the only thing where it's like,
Yeah.
that's wrong, this is right.
No one watches
Just
a new
like-
TV show that's like in a genre they know they don't like and say, well, you know what you got to do here.
right. That's a
Yeah,
good
it's
It's like
we've
it should
had
be
a lot
dark
of-
and gritty.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
it's a
like that's
sitcom.
been our experience,
Yeah.
whether it's like internal coworkers, external voices in the game, population of people who are gamers. Reviewers is a great example. Reviewers, like I'm an MP, like I was saying before, I dodged a bullet with the UI thing because like it's a lot of mundane tasks.
Yeah.
I was just so lucky from my first job all the way through my 10 years at Activision. I was just like the online gameplay guy, which was like my favorite thing in the world to work on. Was like it just happened to be the thing. There was
Yeah.
2 new hires that day. They gave him UI and they gave me like the tanks, and I had to work on the rumbles for the tanks. And
could have
all
gone
the-
another way. It's 50-50.
I mean, I don't understand how it happened,
You
but
just
like,
like your
and then
series of
we
fortunate
both were
events
we both
instead
were
of
on
unfortunate.
Guitar Hero 3 was Activision's first Guitar Hero game.
Yeah.
and he was in charge of all the menus, and I was
All right, you guys did the same. They did the same thing for Guitar Hero as well. Basically.
No,
No,
me and- not me and him.
sorry, not
Just
us.
you.
Yeah,
He's
just
talking
me.
about this
Me and
other
another
that
guy
got
who-
stuff. I
who-
chose UI full well.
Yeah.
No.
But like, and like he was in charge of the GH menus, and like I built all the gameplay for Guitar Hero's online stuff. And it was
Okay.
just because that game was we had to build the whole game in house. So like we had to do all the gems and everything 100% in house. We didn't get any code from when Activision got Guitar Hero.
Right.
So the single player guys are building up what the game's going to be and how the gems are going to work and the highways and all that. And we need to make it work online. So that's what I was
Yeah.
in charge of. And then so on and so forth. And then I became that for Call of Duty. Just like, hey, we want to do more. We want to try this with the weapons. We want animation system to work this way. We want to do this kind of thing. Like I worked on a lot of the core movement stuff for Black Ops 3. Like for example, it just became online gameplay was my specialty by happenstance. And that was to me like just the luckiest thing in the world. Like if I could pick anything, it would be exactly that.
Luck and timing, man.
Yeah, it really honestly was. So just when it came time for what we're doing here with High Horse, it was really just a matter of like we had been through production enough times. Like we saw what worked and what didn't work. We saw which ways like that production pathways that were successful versus not successful versus outright failures, and just that walking those paths enough time. It comes back to mileage. It's just like when you walk those paths enough time, you take your lumps, you learn your lessons, and you kind of get we shipped 15 games between 16 games in 9 years between the two of us, and
A lot of games. So,
you just learn so much. You
so
know,
much
like,
repetition.
It's the
and-
best advice I could give to people. Is just like, man, just build something.
Yeah.
You know,
Also, I think
like,
there's an
try it.
advantage too.
Doesn't
Like,
need to
for
be
example,
good.
like,
Yeah.
build
right.
it.
Right.
The fact that we worked on several Call of Duties, and I only worked on Call of Duty, just World at War through Black Ops 3 at Treyarch. And there's something as well, like when you work on essentially the same game, right? It's the same game, same engine. You're making a new version of it, and you do that for a decade.
Yeah.
It really removes any of the other things that would be sort of confounding variables as to like why certain things work and didn't, right? It's like I'm doing the same thing I did 8 years ago, but like here's what we're doing differently,
a really good
and
point.
it's really obvious
Yeah.
what's working and what's not working. And I think that actually helped a lot.
Also to the High Horse kind of notion, like the thing is that when I first started, I'm sure you probably felt similarly because I know a lot of younger employees that feel this way now. You get the sense that you kind of we got to improve this. We can make this better.
Yeah.
Well,
And it's like slow, like pump the brakes there, kid.
Yeah, it's like
Because
what?
you're less than a year.
kid.
You're less than a year into your first production.
Yeah.
And you got to realize this seems convoluted now.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of people who've been doing this for a long time that know why it's this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's
you're
like-
definitely right. Like I can relate to it in the software at like aspect like alone. Like I'll do advanced support and we get people that have ideas and it's like of course so it's a great idea, but you're not thinking about all these other backend things that are pulling from that one thing that just totally ruins that recipe.
Yeah, it's
of
all
things.
interconnected
Like,
in ways
once
that
you figure out
are not
like
obvious.
the 20 ingredients, you can start to change a couple things here and there and make that perfect. But trying to
Crucially-
recreate
Yeah.
20
in the
that's
tools in the
the-
tools area as well. Like with
Yeah.
ZBrush, in the tools area is where it's most important.
Yes.
You can't break the tools pipeline, period. And you might be talking about like
Stability is,
some
like,
gains
the
over
most
here,
important thing.
but when you have an entire team, be it a studio or in-house developers who are like, we need to rely on this foundational layer of truths, meaning like this works this way, and
Right.
like that's often more critical. You know?
I get that. That makes sense. So for you guys like leading up into Disc Jam, was there well actually I'll ask these questions. Can we mind if we pull up the at least the trailer on the site?
The trailer's pretty outdated.
Or what do you guys
but-
want? What do you guys
pretty
want to
outdated.
show?
I mean,
Whatever you guys are.
Our last blog, our last dev
stream?
dev stream might be better footage, but it's if you want audio, then probably just show the trailer. So if you're gonna run
Okay.
audio with it, we might as well just run the trailer.
Play the trailer, but if you guys like, is this stuff on your blog or where can these guys pull it up online?
Twitch.tv/discjamgame.
Okay.
That's our.
Oh, you can't?
They blocked.
Oh, bummer.
that's all good.
Well,
I mean-
at least just to get a visual aid because
Our YouTube page has like our latest, I guess the trailer we shot, and this was a while ago now. This was like before. This is
Before June?
I mean, we're in about a 13-month production cycle. Like, we started in October of 2015.
We probably
on
filmed
this.
it like 8 months ago.
So like
7
this is
months
like
ago.
75% of the production cycle ago is when this trailer got made.
why does just Disc Jam have limited playist hours?
Yes, that was when we were only
play
doing
test.
Thursdays, and we did Thursdays for 12 hours. Was like
Yeah, we
how
should
we
take that down now.
how we funnel people. We gotta take all that down, dude. I just started purging.
He's like doing quality control right now. He's like, "You gotta take that down.
Indicate footage. I started purging off our Facebook already.
Yeah, we
So there
gotta
it is.
purge it all.
Yeah, like cue
Found
that
our
baby
Indicate
up.
trailer, which was like,
Yeah.
it's amazing.
Oh
we ever
yeah,
got to
the
deal with
green
that.
light trailer.
But yeah, that's the one right there.
brutal.
Kyle, roll the thing.
Yeah.
Hit the triangle.
You maximize it.
640 by 480.
So yeah, we changed a lot since then. There's that mannequin character at the top.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
essentially it's like a Pong like, you know.
It's such. I mean, I remember why when I saw the trailer the first time, I was like, dude, this looks like so much fun.
If you ever played like Windjammers, which is like my favorite arcade game of all time, it's like Windjammers and Mario Tennis mixed with NBA Jam.
The first thing I thought of was Tron.
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah.
Tron
Yeah.
mixed with NBA Jam.
Yeah,
that was
totally.
That's our
Totally.
doubles.
It's got this sort of future American Gladiators vibe going
good.
on.
American Gladiator is perfect. You're
Future
speaking my
American
language.
Gladiators is like the exact motivation
like our-
for that character on the top there.
Laser and Blazer.
We've changed a lot too. Like these pylons are block out. The half court plates are block out. The net scoreboard actually. I'm surprised that scoreboard was in because I thought that was.
Yeah, I
kinda-
thought that came online later.
Like the level of customization, you have a
that's
lot of
all done in
controls.
ZBrush. That's the mannequin character, of course.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So all these characters, assets in ZBrush as well. You guys doing
Everything
like
100%
environment?
in ZBrush. Yeah, we do. We do texturing. We'll do the skin paints in ZBrush still, but the texturing I'll do externally for the most part.
It's
And-
such
but
a
yeah, but
cool.
I mean, I don't even just with the Q modeler stuff now. I don't even use Maya hardly at all. You
So
know?
you're using Z Modeler to do all your poly and block modeling stuff in ZBrush now.
Oh, it's Alt Q, so I call it Q modeler.
Yeah, yeah,
Alt
that's
Q.
fine.
on my hotkey. But yeah, Z modeler.
I was thinking you were referencing
Yeah, no,
QMesh.
I use that for even because the thing is that base mesh. The big thing is like organic versus inorganic in hard surface.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys are well aware of all this stuff because you guys are the ones building this stuff. But like, you know, just bridging that gap is great because if you're doing Dynamesh as the ball of clay, which came out years ago, you know, it's great for sculpting organic stuff and like
when you gotta low poly that out.
but if
get
you
some
got a
UVs.
gun, like it'd be kind of, you know, doing like a Dynamesh, which you can do with like all the cool masking stuff. But like if you were gonna do like a hard surface like a pistol, for example, in Dynamesh, it would be a little tricky because you got, you know, resolution there you probably don't need or want.
Yeah.
But now with like the Z modeler stuff, it's like I'll use Z modeler for base meshing stuff. Then I'll throw it like I'll do a Z modeler base mesh. It's in the proportion of like the net or the scoreboard that has like sexy bevels and good kind of like, you know, futuristic like in cuts and things like that that kind
Yeah.
of like show the art shape
Right.
a lot better. And
Right.
Like now, like our pipeline's so fast that at Activision, I was never involved in the art pipeline, but it was always like, you know, you have these specialists who are like top tier concept artists. All they do is the 2D stuff, and like they make an amazing concept on a brilliant demo sheet, and they hand that to the 3D guy.
Yeah.
3D guy's the high res sculpt. They get some sign off, have a few meetings. Then a different 3D artist comes in and does the low poly and does the UVing and texturing, and then a different guy comes in and actually textures the piece. Like, you know, that's all me now in our production pipeline.
Wow, so you're doing all of those things.
Yeah,
all
and
in
the
ZBrush
problem there is that I need feedback. You know, like
Sure.
I need someone to say this sucks, because I'm just gonna be like, hey, I got this like little concept I'm doing, like this little flower pot that
I'm the guy who says this sucks.
Yeah, so like, but like
that would be me.
as opposed to that
You hold
review
like a
process.
cue card like 5.6.
Yes, yeah.
Do better.
No,
next
it's great
time.
because like he can be really harsh, I can be really harsh, and we don't get our feelings hurt very easily. So it's
Yeah.
like this sucks. Fix this.
I think that's an
It's
important
super
thing
important.
to be a team because it's just you two.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jay, did you have experience as far as asset creation or sculpting, or are you just solely working on back-end development?
Yeah, I guess we didn't really talk about my background at all. I mean,
I didn't know if you wanted to or not. I didn't want to pressure you.
It's
We can
it's fine.
chat.
It's fine.
I ramble.
Yeah. My background's basically just that. Like I started programming super young, like at 5, because
wow.
I was like super into games, and we had like an old IBM PC, and we like lived in a fairly small town. There was like one computer shop, had a couple games in it. I played the games that were there, wanted more games.
So you're like, I'm going to make them.
And well, my dad sort of, you know, like sarcastically kind of mentioned that. It was essentially like, well, you know, he tried to explain to me that like computers are mostly used for business, and like most of the software like
Dads of the 80s.
was like written.
That's not a career. You can't make a job out of that.
Well, it wasn't so much that. It was more just like, I was like, why aren't there more games? What's going on? Right.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, you know, people use computers for work,
Did you
not
see
for
the
games.
ET game that came out? That it was a total bust. Son.
Yeah. Have
They
you checked a
buried them all in
landfill
the-
recently?
Yeah.
No, but so like they came with like BASIC, right? It came with that programming language BASIC, and it had this massive reference manual. It was like, you know, I don't know.
Is that right?
To me, it was like I was a kid, so I felt
What
like
a
it was
start.
100 pounds. I don't know how big it actually was, but like it was a big, huge
100
binder.
pounds relative to
and it was
5-year-old.
like, and he was like, yeah, you know, most businesses
crazy
write their
start.
own software, and he just like dropped it on my lap and was like, here you go.
Wow.
You know, and obviously that was not for me. But I was like legitimately interested, and so my mom, who is the most supportive person ever, she went out and she found this book that was like the absolute beginner's guide to like BASIC, and it taught you via making games. And again, I was too
You
young.
learned on basic.
Yeah, and I was too young to like
Gross.
learn BASIC in that way.
Yeah.
But what I did really like doing was they had the full example program. So I would sit there at the computer and I would copy the programs from the book into the computer and then run them, and I would play the game.
Oh,
and
interesting.
in that process, I would type it wrong and I would make mistakes, and I sort of
learned
learned
from
what
those
different
little
errors
things.
are coming from what
Yeah.
different mistakes. And then I would sort of realize as I'm typing it that certain parts were clearly relating to certain parts of the game. And then I would change it, and I would see that it would change things. And I just sort of learned that way. And so I did that growing up. And I think just like when you're a hobbyist programmer in general, games are what you make because it's fun, right? Like nothing else is really all that fun to
You
make.
don't want to make like a
Right? You're like, I'm not
banking
gonna
system app. Or
yeah, I'm not like sitting there like at 14, like I'm gonna take down Excel. Here comes the next
All right.
spreadsheet app.
Exactly.
And so I just sort of learned that way. And then I went to college and I did computer science there. And it really wasn't my intention to go into games. I was going to do biomedical engineering, and then again, my dad sophomore year of
Trust me,
of the
I
fall.
totally relate to the dad stories.
I'm on the phone with him, and he's just like, so like, what's your plan this summer? And I was like, it's the fall. And he was like, yeah, I know. I just thought like I should give you heads up that like if you think that you're going to come home this summer and not do anything, like you're wrong. And I was like, so you want me to get an internship or something like that? He was like, yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. I was like, okay, all right. So, you know, it wasn't junior year. I wasn't trying to think of like what internship do I want that's like going to like become my full-time career. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, why don't I do like something fun? What can I do? And I thought that I would just apply to video game companies. So I obviously knew them all because I play a ton of video games. And so I just sort of went on their websites and I just started like shooting my resume out to everyone. Activision ended up getting in touch with me. And I think it was mostly like I'd worked on like Pocket Quake, which was a like Quake port to Pocket PCs, which no one knows anymore, but they were like the Windows Palm Pilots.
Okay.
Yeah, like a Windows OS and a Palm
I don't
Pilot.
even know if I remember
Yeah,
those.
no, and I owned one, and it was like the worst one. It was like it had the processor that nobody supported for anything, and so it was like they had ported Quake to it, and I was like, oh, this is so rad, I want to do this, and it didn't run because everyone was like, oh yeah, but we don't care about this processor. I was like, oh, so I like got it working, and that was like my experience with it. So I had that on my resume of like I'd gotten it working on that processor, and. I didn't know.
That'll get you a phone call.
That's an
Right,
achievement.
and I
It's
didn't
like,
know
oh,
that
problem
Call of
solved.
Duty was all written on the Quake engine.
That'll get you a phone call from Activision. So if people want advice on how to like,
Yeah.
how do I break in? Do something like that.
Do something in like the Quake engine, and they'll talk to you. 'Cause
Interesting.
So
That's
I was
good
like, I
advice.
didn't know at the time that it was all based on the Quake engine, and
Still is.
And it's funny too, because when I got my internship, like I play a ton of video games, but I'd never really played Call of Duty. I had a lot of friends who did, and I just didn't really get into it. But of course, I didn't tell them that, and they were like, "Oh, you know, do you play Call of Duty?" I was like, "I love Call of Duty. It's like the best." I was like, "Yeah, oh my god!"
totally.
And then they were like, "Great," and because they were working on World of War at the time.
I just
And,
left to go to Neversoft.
Oh.
Yeah, we just missed
a day
each other.
later.
We just
Okay.
missed each other, and so I was like,
Interesting.
oh yeah. So
Started
they
this
bring me in the interview, and they're sort of like doing the rounds, and they're like, oh yeah, no. And so they're like, oh, do you want to play? And he's like, oh, I don't know if you play Call of Duty. And they're like, no, he says he loves it. And he was like, great. So he hit me the controller. Like
You're
first
like,
thing I did was blow myself up with a grenade, and I was like, oh, sorry, I switched the control scheme. And they're like, okay, and I was like,
I never knew that.
yeah, it was so fun.
Oh, that's amazing.
yeah.
Were you just like,
They didn't
meant
make me
to do
play
that?
on my. They didn't make me play.
I mean, they didn't make me play. It was just like we were talking
one of the Fridays or something.
No, it was I was in an interview with one of the level designers, and so they were like, "Here, why don't you like do a run through of this campaign level? Like, check it out, what I'm working on, right?" And I was like, "Cool, I have no idea how to play this."
That's amazing.
Great
But
story.
yeah, so I ended up interning there, and like I loved it. It was awesome.
I like how you guys are like figuring this out now.
Yeah,
Like you
we've
just-
talked
you're-
about a lot
we've
of stuff.
talked about it a bit.
The,
I mean-
the origin stories though were both separate, obviously. So it's
Yeah.
like we
So
kinda,
what point
Yeah,
did
so
you guys
we met
connect
back
again?
up on Black Ops 2, right?
Black Ops, yeah, 2, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
'cause-
came back during Black Ops 2.
Neversoft had recently announced they were going to be working Call of Duty. And so, and I was at Neversoft for all the Guitar Heroes and then one of the Tony Hawks.
I was just gonna say that's Tony Hawk. Which one?
The last one, 9.
Okay.
Which was a great game, but
I stopped playing at, like,
well, everybody
3,
did. So I
but-
mean, like it was
yeah.
a shame because like that was actually a pretty polished Tony Hawk experience. Like everything that Tony Hawk was, 9 was like a polished version of all the little doodads they've added, all the different challenges they've added. There's cool online stuff. You could like the online stuff they did where you could like have it kind of be a world where you and your buddies could beat each other on the tricks on the areas. There's a lot of nifty things in there.
Yeah.
But the ship had already sailed on the extreme sports genre. I mean, do people even watch like X Games anymore? I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm
No, you know, honestly, I remember
It's a genuine question.
being a kid in the '90s, being
It was a
obsessed
huge
with
deal.
it, and then it just kind of
It's on like it's on like the Ocho now.
Yeah, the Ocho.
So it's like it's one of those things like that the extreme sports thing. It hasn't been like an extreme sports game that's done really well recently. Like even EA Skate, I don't think they produce that anymore. Even though it did really reviewed well, sold well, but they stopped making those I think as well.
I know
Yeah, I
Steep
don't-
just came out, which
There's a
is
new
like the
skate
open
game.
world, like
Yeah,
you
the
know,
Ubisoft
mountain,
I think. The
right? I don't know that it did that well though, but
I'd go back and play it
I
just
saw-
for the soundtracks.
Yeah, and again, I would still fire up Trans World Surf right now and just zone
Yeah.
out and love it. But point being is that like you know that ship had sailed and Guitar Hero just got basically that thing was over too. So Neversoft was in this transition period, and they're like, we're gonna make Call of Duty, and I was like, all right, that sounds great. I'm gonna go to make Call of Duty with people who've been doing it for 10 years because like A, it's down the street from my house, and commuting was a nightmare. But B, that was my first job. My bosses and all my old coworkers were all still there, and I still
okay.
loved all those guys. I loved my time at Call of Duty 3, and all those
Yeah.
guys were still there. And Joel at Neversoft was really cool about it. He was just like, he's like, you know what, do what you want, and I'll support whatever you want to do. Like
Yeah.
that was one thing about Neversoft. They were very, very much all for individual growth. And I was like, I think it'd be better for me to go back to my first studio and work on the next Black Ops because Black Ops 1 for me was like a really big moment for Treyarch. They were always kind of considered the kind of second studio in the franchise.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't know how everybody else feels about this internally or externally, but like when Black Ops 1 came out, it was such an achievement to me that made them, in my mind, the studio in charge of Call of Duty.
Yeah.
There was just so much new stuff in it. It was
a surprisingly
it was a
fantastic
big game. And I was like, there's just so much stuff that they
I'd been
advanced the
falling out
franchise
of
with.
love with it a little, and then that came out.
I hear that a lot, you know. So that's just how I felt about it. So I was just in touch with them, and I just said, I really would like to work back where I started. And they're like, man, come. And they're like, we don't poach from other studios. And I was like, no, Joel's cool with it. And they like, he just wants me to do whatever I want to do. And they're like, all right, well, come on by. And so that's how I started on Black Ops 2, which again was, for me, I loved working on that game. I thought that game we did a lot of things well on it, and it was just a lot of fun to be working on the gameplay of that game. So I think it came out really polished, really balanced.
Yeah.
So that's when we first kind of met. And it's funny too, because when we talk to people from work now, they're like, when's this thing gonna blow up?
Yeah.
Because they just think that the two of us are like could not possibly ever work together, but we always work really well
blow
together.
up in a bad way.
Yeah, like, no. Saying like self-destruct. One of the two you sure-headed, like one of the two you like
which
loud,
is another layer to the high horse name.
Which is that Jay and I tend to be pretty
vocal.
We're vocal.
Would be the nice way of saying it.
Yeah.
Abrasive. Maybe might be
so you guys
bad,
were the guys in the studio that were just kind of.
It's hard to put it because like, I certainly like hopefully am not like abrasive to the point where it's like people don't want to because like again like I was a manager at Treyarch and
we were both hiring managers and I think the people that we worked with and that we hired
had respect for us, I hope, and we tried to be mutual. But like we also though are very very headstrong, and can start maybe like being a little overly confident in what we know to be right. I think anybody could be guilty of that. And so it's like the two of us together, anyone's worked with either of us. Because we didn't like I managed my team, Jay managed his. So like we didn't cross over a lot in terms of our responsibilities. But whenever we had to work on something together, it was like lickety splickety done.
Yeah,
it was just like,
got done.
Is this going to be right? No, it's that. Is it this? Or is that? Is that the way to do it? Okay, done. And out it went. Like so we always worked really well together. And like I said previously in the interview, like we kind of always talked about external things a lot. When things were happening in the world of games that we like new advancements technology, both of us were all over it, and like we talked about that stuff a lot. Right. So we worked really well together. But like anybody who's like worked with us or been in a room where it's like there's 10 people, everyone's disagreeing on something, and Tim and Jay are in the cinema version of that room.
High horse guys back
here. It's like you can speak a lot of authority at times.
Right. I think what it came down to is that like we're just very. We're willing to go against the grain if we really don't think that something's being done properly, or like in the right way, and we try not to do that, frankly, when it comes down to like things like personal preference. But when it comes down to like production matters of like the way you get a game done and like the right order and pipelines, like we're pretty obsessed about those sorts of things. And I think like so when we talk to people from work and they're really surprised that like we haven't killed each other yet, the thing that's funny though that it comes down to is like we agree.
Yeah, it hasn't
like,
even like
the things that we're super opinionated about. We agree, and this was for us is like the big test of like, well, let's see if we're right. Let's put like our money where our mouths are, and like let's do the things in the way that we like do.
Like if we were both very happy at Activision. Like riding off on your high horse is kind of part of it because it's like leaving a gig like that is kind of foolish considering the success of indie 2-man titles. I mean, how many of those make it off the ground? You never know. So it's like there's a little bit of like right off on your high horse, and it's also a little bit of what I was saying before about the whole like the built-in arrogance of just all people in games. It's like that like this is the way you make games go. It's like that.
Well, you've talked about
we
that.
want to remind ourselves not to be that ever.
Right. We're trying to keep ourselves
be tongue-in-cheek about the fact that like
we can't be those guys and also be named High Horse. It would be like too much. Right?
So
the internet's going to be the first one to be like, oh, here's High Horse and they're High Horse again.
It's kind of like this. It's like a self like make fun of ourselves a little bit and like poke fun of ourselves and not become those guys. We're so authoritative.
Yeah. Right.
Like the amount of people in video games who don't even play them anymore, but will tell you the only way to make them is this is baffling. And that's not just like my experience.
No, but I think
I hear that from everybody.
And I think another good point is like if you read like a lot of these Gamma Sutra articles and a lot of these like business related articles as well, right? Like everyone's really quick to back rationalize successes of like, oh, well, here's obviously the reason that it was successful.
Yeah.
Without also doing the like, okay, well, here's 10 things that did the exact same thing that weren't.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like there's that super bias to only talk about the things that are successful, and everyone's so sure that like they've got it figured out.
But then like model.
Yeah. But then all those ventures like they don't work out that way. And like I would say that I haven't found a single like avenue that I would say is like, oh, this is the way that you do it, and this works every time. And
nobody
this is, or everyone would be doing it, right? I mean, like,
well, the consumer market is so used to now getting what they want and being able to like comment on something and I want this and this is why and da da da. So I can see why people think that, but they're like the experience, like you said, the time and experience is what tells all. Data,
and that's the craft.
Data proves everything. Right. And if you don't have that, if you're just going from your gut,
That's
You're
the
just-
craft. People are so content to talk about like games as an art form, and in their version of that is like, look how pretty it is. And it's like
Yeah.
the craft. Art is a choice. Like art, whatever it is making a choice, and like that's what art is. And game development, which people don't really talk about all that often, is like it could be something as simple as an interaction between an NPC and a player. It could be as simple as like, you know, like this giant landscape looks beautiful and it shows in this way while this music is playing. But like the craft is the choice. Like what just doesn't sit with people, or like there's a lot of stuff that happens just in the interaction of gameplay, like how and when you pick up and swing an axe, whatever it might be. Making that feel good, that's the craft of gameplay, and like that's what I think makes successful products. And
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
If those things are, it's just is an intrinsic kind of thing that resonates with the person's experiencing, and
Right.
so much more than it is like a business model or a size v scope of the thing versus how much more, all that kind of stuff. Of course, those things are important and they're relative to the success of a product, but like you find things that like do well. Like Jay was just saying, and you're like, oh, well, Rocket League succeeded because it was in PlayStation Plus. It's like Rocket League succeeded because that game is more fun than any game I played in a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
And like we were in production on Disc Jam before that game came out, and we were not so sure that Disc Jam would be the kind of game that people would like, or at least, you know, purchase, because there weren't really very many and still aren't multiplayer only games. And like we'll have offline play. We're like couch play or online play.
And even more so, you know, it
Split
came
screen
out of
online.
us playing a bunch of like, we were just sitting on the couch and we played like a ton of arcade sports games, right? And we were just like, where is like this, but online with all the new peripheral
like
features
range,
that everything
searching for
has,
things,
and
trying
ranked
to
and competitive. And
You guys are trying to basically answer those things in your
and
own
we knew
way.
we wanted
like-
to play them, and we wanted,
Yeah.
so we made
Right.
a game that we wanted to
right,
play.
so we're like, well, let's start making that. And then I think
the meantime, Rocket League comes
really
out.
proved that model of like, okay,
Nobody
good,
wrote
people
about
do want that.
yeah, not a single article wrote about it until it was too big to ignore. It's like,
Right.
And actually, we had a great article written about us at PAX, because this one guy wrote for Attack of the Fanboy, and he was like, "I'm so glad you said that, because I was a member of the media. I got the emails about Rocket League. I mean, Psyonix would email everybody saying, "Hey, check out our game, cover our game," just like all of us indies do. And I don't know what it is, and we certainly haven't cracked it either, because no one writes about us, but no one wrote about Rocket League, and eventually it got out, and it became so big you couldn't ignore it.
Yeah.
But like, no one writes about us either, and hopefully, you know, we get a decent amount of notoriety, and someone writes about us eventually. But like, it's one of those things where, how could you ignore the game that's fun? And like, when I came,
Right.
it took me 10 minutes with that game to be like, oh my god, yes, dude.
There are many great things that exist in the world. It's games, whatever, but it's random. It could be any one thing that got it into that realm where people start to notice and share. And it doesn't mean that it's not good from the get go. It's just
Totally.
it's such a weird
It's like
machine.
luck meets execution.
And also,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Rocket League is a particularly interesting example just because it's a sequel. Their precursor, which was the like terribly named supersonic acrobatic rocket powered battle cars, I think is the name.
Did they have an acronym? Was there an acronym?
It was
for
like
that?
it's a terrible acronym
don't
too.
know the
It's like
acronym's too long. I don't remember
SARP
it.
BC or something, and it's like I don't
Doesn't
know how
work
you
at all.
pronounce that, but like I see it written, and it's, you know, but it was basically a very 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 similar game, but you know, Rocket League succeeds in a lot of ways where it didn't. You know, and part of that may be timing, and part of that is execution. But I think when you really look at it, and especially when you play both side by side, it's like it highlights what I think the major difference is, which is like a lot of times dismissed because it's sort of intangible, but I think it's the most important thing, which is that games, more than I think any other medium in which we like interact or tell stories or these things, is so interdisciplinary. Of like, you've got your art and you've got your animations and you've got your gameplay, and especially at these big companies, they're all, you know, like the art pipeline alone is going to be like 8 people before you get into the game itself.
Yeah.
And then you have to worry about like how the animation fits in with the actual gameplay timings. And when you have all those people and they're all just rowing in their own directions, you can tell when you play it.
Yeah.
Right. And when you have, so I think like we have an advantage in that because we don't have the 8 people, it's a lot easier for us to row in the same
Right,
direction.
you can make
But-
decisions, and it's just between the two of you, and it doesn't get lost in the fray of all the other people.
Yeah,
that
and we
are-
talk a lot about how like if we were going to bring other people on, that's like the biggest challenge to us is like making sure that that doesn't happen, where you start getting people pulling in other directions. But when you look at these studios like Rocket League, who I think had like 15 people when they were working on it, a lot of the games at Blizzard, they do this really well, right? Is that it's all, you can feel that it's all done together, right? You could tell that the gameplay engineer was talking to the artist who was talking to the animator, and they all executed on the same thing, as opposed to saying like, well, I did my portion
The animation
Good
looks
luck
good.
with that.
Yeah.
Right. It's like when it's that waterfall aspect of like, well, the concept artist made the thing and then it gave it to the animator and then the animator gives it to the engineer and he's like, yeah, I don't know if this lines up, but like do whatever you have to do.
And there's a rigger in the middle.
Like
and
add
there's
whatever
little-
magic
this little
numbers and
prop
code to like make
dangles
this not be awkward. And you're
Right.
like, well, you can tell. Right?
Because like our whole thing was like gameplay first, and that's certainly like a novel thing that people like celebrate, but doesn't usually turn into sales. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like you get like the whole gameplay is the most important. Do gameplay first, and it's like we hope to maybe make that true because we're certainly not going to win any awards for the most beautiful game of the year.
Yeah.
But we get so much great feedback. Like I mean, instantly, and this is dating back to we're 8 weeks into the project. Like we're at IndieCade 2015. Project's 8 weeks old, and it's ugly, and it's. But we had a crowd the entire show. We got
That's
introduced to our now account manager at Sony at that show.
Okay.
And just everything that led to us publishing on PlayStation started 8 weeks into the project because we had a crowd and it was a very well received game because it felt great.
Yeah,
Just
I mean
the
that was the
gameplay-
number one feedback of like, you got all the same
This looks
feedback of
dull.
like, yeah,
Oh my God,
like
this is
ooh,
kinda
like
fun. Like,
I
we
really
had
would
a
like it
turnaround
if
like
these
that.
characters
Yeah.
looked better, or like
The
if
map
this
was terrible.
yeah, or if like the ground looks weird, or like because there was like tons of stuff that was super temp. But the number one thing that we got more than the negative feedback, which was really surprising to us, because again we were really nervous to show it because it's like
We didn't think it was going to.
we worked on it for 8 weeks straight and we're so close to it and we're like I don't even know if this is fun, but like
Yeah.
let's just do it,
including
right?
shooting a trailer, which we also are not.
Yeah, which we had no idea what we were doing.
That's not the one that we just watched.
No.
No,
Okay.
that
This was
trailer
the-
is scary. I removed that one from any. No one
That's
can see
been
that.
that's been scrubbed as,
Yeah.
as hard as you could.
No one can see that one.
So let me ask you this: as far as this game in particular, when you guys left, when you guys had probably just wrapped with the final project, when you guys made a decision together to leave the full production and go and create High Horse
No,
Entertainment.
so it was
Actually
totally
wasn't together, yeah.
separate.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I
Yeah,
left
yeah.
I think about a year before Tim did, for me it was more just about needing a change.
Okay.
Because I had worked at Treyarch the whole time and I started when I was 20, it was like if I stayed on through the end of BO3, then I would have worked on just Call of Duty for my entire 20s. And I
Wow.
was like,
you wanted
that's
to
like the bridge too
venture
far.
out and see what else you could do.
Yeah, it's just, I didn't want to make the same game again. And even still, like, it was one of the hardest things to do because you're just like, am I making the dumbest career move right now? Like, I'm in a great spot. I'm making a great
Yeah.
game. Like, I'm having fun doing it. Is this dumb?
BO3
But-
was a good one to be on. It was fun.
Yeah, and it was really fun.
dude, you really
and we
messed
had
up.
more
Should've-
time because we had 3 years.
First
so
three-
it's
first
like you
3-year
feel like
pod
there's a
cycle
lot
they
you
had.
can really do, and you're like, So
it was more
but ultimately,
ambitious.
I was like, whatever. If I don't leave now, I'm just gonna be here for life. I was
Yeah.
like, I can come back here for life maybe later if that's like what I really want to do. But like, I got to just do something else.
Just to know.
Yeah, just to know. And so,
And then when I left, I was basically, I was happy. I was in charge of like what I thought was like one of my favorite things about Black Ops 3. I was the core movement overhaul where we added wall running and the jump jets
yeah.
and like just the
was a
traversals.
ton of
You
additions.
can traverse any surface. If there's an edge there, you can traverse it. And like that was my responsibility on that project, and I was very, very happy with how that went. And that's going to make me a villain to a lot of your listeners, but it was also, I think, on the whole, it was taken very well. But not only the reviewers, but like even in like Reddit and like our consumers, like very, very, for the most part, like the pros aren't wild about it because it changed the pro scene very, very. But that's
Sure.
like the 1%.
Yeah.
Like on the whole, I think it made the game more fun, and that was kind of like I was very proud of that work. So I wasn't really like keen on leaving so much as I was. We were trying to hire replacements. We had a lot of key people leave, not a ton, but we had some really important people leave, and we were trying to hire network engineers. And here we are on one of the most successful franchises in the world, just trying to fill a network engineering slot on a really exciting project, and we could not find anybody. And I was like, I'm a network engineer. I was like, are my skills in that much demand that they're that hard to find like online gameplay guys? And I realized very quickly that my skill set was in demand out there in just the world. So I started kind of dipping my toe in the water and seeing what was out there, and it became very clear to me really quickly I could sort of kind of do whatever I wanted as a career.
Yeah.
Like there was opportunities at the window. I was just like, all right, well, I never really thought about that. And so I started kind of like thinking about it a lot more and realizing that I always wanted to make my own games anyway. And so, I was like, here's a pretty good step, like becoming an independent
So
contractor.
that kind of opened up the door to thinking about it, because I guess you can get your blinders on and get stuck into each game's
Especially when you're
offering
happy.
you some
Yeah.
incentive to stay. You get to work on something new.
It's
So like, oh, I
always
could stay.
easier to not change, right? It's
Oh, for
always
sure.
easier to not make a change. And even when it's a change that seems so obvious,
Yeah.
like that you want to make in your life, it's so much easier to do it tomorrow.
Just hearing your backstories and like getting to know you guys, that is a mark of any like leader and people that make decisions and that are creative. You push yourself. It's like as artists, we push ourselves to master that thing. But in order to do that, you have to take chances and you have to, not do the same thing all the time.
Yeah.
Because that's like I always wonder if people that work in games, especially like if you Call of Duty specifically, because it's a lot of repetition of the same things, the art comes into, and I look at it as art is developing a better UI and going through and really just fine tuning those things and making it that much better.
You get an
How do you
opportunity
inject
to like
the-
look at things in a detail that you would never get to look at in any other project, right? Because you can look at something that's gone through 8 iterations, over the years and be like, I'm going to noodle this thing right here that I don't think has been noodled in 5 years, right?
Yeah.
And
Which somebody else might be like, I don't
and
want to
someone
touch
else
that. It was
probably
good
also
where
made
was.
it in like 2 seconds, right? And
exactly
that's the
how
thing
it
that you
was,
make
yeah.
in 2 seconds in any other project. But
Yeah.
like in Call of Duty, when you're working on it for 10 years, that gets like, 10 hours later, several
that's
years
exactly how it
for
was
some
with the
arbitrary
core
reason
movement.
because you can't.
The core movement was legit code that had not been touched since Quake 3. I mean, like Quake 3. It was just like,
Wow.
it hasn't needed to change. Like some of
it
it,
was
like
great.
mantling was a good example. Like it had to go up and then forward and then on. And like our animators would have to author very specific animation for a very specific programmatic like
So you're saying
approach.
like if you're climbing up an edge, or
yeah.
you're
So
saying
if you
like,
ever played all the old Call of Duties, you
Yeah.
can notice it's just like wah, wah, wah. And
Yeah.
it does never look good because you can't animate that way. It's
Right.
So
Right. It's
like,
hard to animate someone moving at right angles. It's
So
like,
like,
people don't
that's
really
all the
do
stuff
that.
that we were kind of tearing down for the first time in about 8-9 years. I mean, that was like the first time we kind of touched that stuff. So
Yeah.
it's cool to like have what ended up being like a year and a half and probably something that will never get completely dialed in perfectly because of the way the engine is. But like to spend a year and a half, 2 years, like let's change the way all climbing happens. And like let's change the way like our designers don't have to they don't have to put brushes down because they would used to say, okay, this is like a 5-unit mantle, this is a 10-unit mantle.
Yeah.
Let's make it everything's mantle. If it's got a 90-degree edge or like 79-degree edge, it can be mantled. Let's make it that way.
Yeah.
And let the designers go nuts and make whatever they want and see if it works or not.
I like that idea that it's because I always thought that there was just a lot of repurposing, but I almost like the idea of just starting over because you can. It's like it's with students or teaching people ZBrush. It's like sometimes if you learned your lesson, you go to the end, you got where it was, but do it again and do it a couple more times even, and you'll be surprised at what it'll look like.
One thing that's super interesting that I always found really fascinating at Treyarch, and I've heard similar things from other people in other studios that are working on franchises, is that like there's this loop that everyone seems to go through together where you skip years of thinking things are good ideas, right? Whereas like you'll like everyone in the studio will like really want to do like co-op, right? And then next year you're like, that was the most insane amount of work
I
for
don't wanna
like,
do that
and
again.
like no one really liked it or whatever. Maybe that's how you feel about it. And so you like skip, and then you're like, why don't we have this? We should have this thing, right? And
Like 2 projects later.
yeah, and so like whatever feature it is, it's really interesting how like there are some things that keep coming back and like
Yes.
oscillate into people's consciousness.
Yeah.
Because you either feel like you should have it and you didn't get it right last time, or you feel like you did get it right and it just wasn't worth doing, or
Yeah.
whatever that
People
is.
transition into new roles. That there's a new guy.
Right, or there's someone new who just
Yeah.
thinks it's a great
And
idea.
they're like young, and they're like, I'm willing to do it. I don't.
Right,
They don't
or
know.
like, yeah,
They're like, sure
exactly.
you do,
Someone
kid.
came in
Go
on their
for it.
high horse and said, like, why aren't you guys doing this? And you're like, dude, we did
Or
that.
it's like a 45-year-old outside hires had a lot of success. Who's like, you guys have been missing vehicles for too long. This didn't actually happen. This is a complete fictional. This is a complete fiction. But like that's just an example of what it would look like. It's
Yeah,
like,
right,
like a guy that had a lot of success at some other company,
Right.
a lot of titles
Just
under
like,
his belt
where's
as
my-
in a
where's
creative
my
director
ghosts?
role.
Right.
Comes in is like on his high horse and is like, hey, you know what we gotta do? Planes, trains, automobiles in Call of Duty. Let's do it. And it's like they get more authority than the other guys, so like off you go.
Okay, I
And you
guess
spin
we're
up
doing
you spin
that.
up a year-long production cycle on something that gets shuttered. You never know.
Yeah.
So like and like I said, that's complete fiction, but that kind of stuff does happen where it's like it's just you never know.
I think for better or for
When things are
worse,
in vogue.
there's pros and
Yeah.
cons to that. I mean, as far as like just ideas and introducing new things, it's like I think of it in like a in science science fiction fuels innovation. Like
Totally.
science fiction, you see all kinds of crazy things in movies, but a lot of the stuff that we have, like phones and technology, is driven from the inspiration that just the idea of it and considering the possibility of doing it.
Yeah.
So I wonder, like, for you guys, I guess specifically for your game, why Disc Jam, and what was the thought process behind doing it? Is it just a way to get started, or?
Well, it's a few things, right? So the first is we were keenly aware of how much we didn't know in terms of we've been doing game dev for a really long time. We have not gone through the full process as a 2-man team of trying to market it. We haven't gone through the full, of all the publishing stuff, of getting it onto consoles and getting it through certification processes and all this stuff that we've done varying degrees, but we didn't have a good idea of like, well, are there going to be pieces of this flow where like we absolutely need to hire someone else? Like all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So the first thing is we wanted something that was like small scope that we could say, okay, like let's get this done, let's get this out there and like figure it out. Which is how it started, which is how we were like, let's make something in 8 weeks and bring it to Indicate and like, let's see what happens, right? That was like our test of like how fast we can make things. But on the other hand, it came from a few other things, which is one, since we're both network engineers, we knew we wanted to do online stuff. We wanted to do multiplayer stuff.
Yeah.
So we had spent about a year just working on the networking technology that we're using for Disc Jam because we knew we wanted to do small player counts, but really, really fast-paced arcade style stuff. So that's what we'd been working on.
Okay.
And when we sort of had that night where we sat down and played like 800 different versions of Pong, it's like we played like Virtua Tennis,
like,
we played Mario Tennis, we played Windjammers, we played PlayStation 1 Pong, which is a fantastic
Please
game.
tell me you played Tron.
We didn't play Disc of Tron that
The
night.
disc battle? You guys never like
the 80s arcade game one?
You had the tank, and then you had the disc battles where you had to jump along 3 platforms and you had to throw the disc.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's
I've played it, but we didn't play it that night. We played.
There's
like,
a place called
We played 2v2 ice hockey. We played like just
we played some NBA Jam, I think.
Windjammers. We played like just everything we played was like just one game object and like get it past the other thing.
Yeah, and
Like,
we realized that like everything we played was like 800 versions of Pong, and we were talking about, well, where's this online with all those peripheral features, and we realized like that something like that's super fast paced with a thing that's flying back and forth, where like the speed of like the disc going from your hand into the end zone is probably on the order of like what some people's pings are, right? The
connections
of like
to each
of
other.
just like how long it takes to transmit a message back and forth. So we're like, this is like the best test of like, can we do this?
How fast can we make it? How like robust can we make the online space for this tech we've been writing, which is like, again, for fast-paced arcade-style gameplay. We want like the architecture of it is to make couch play and online play pretty much identical within a reasonable connection, which is like, in our mind, like 150 milliseconds or below, it should be identical to couch play. Therefore, the competitive play can take place online or on the couch, and it can be something that can be a viable competitive product.
Yeah.
So that was like the sort of kind of ethos, I guess.
Yeah, but then we spun it up in like 8 weeks, and that 8 weeks was using our online tech. And so when we brought it to Indicate, it was actually like that worked technically online. And we played it on 2 stations, networked, but the thing was, we were actually really surprised at how much positive feedback we got. To the point where we were like, well, let's spend maybe a little bit longer on it and make it like a full product. That's like we actually go the whole distance and do all the peripheral features.
You're not even like at this point, you're not really thinking too far ahead. You're setting these marks and you're just trying to go through and experiment.
It was a business decision because it was like, A, we need to test the networking stuff, make sure it's like our assumptions are correct.
Yeah.
B, are people into arcade sports, or is it just us? Like it could just be us.
Right.
Yeah. Like luckily
it could just be because we're 30 and we're being
30
nostalgic
and
about those old arcade games, right? It's like
we had no idea that it could have just been that.
Yeah.
Like, and thankfully it's been really well received lately. We had a couple of pro Rocket League players tweeted about our beta, and then a couple more, and I'll never forget the moment. 'Cause it was like one, I was like, hey, like we don't have a lot of followers on Twitter, so if we get a tweet from somebody, we're like, hey, you see this tweet?
Like, hey, you see this pro Rocket League guy?
It was like, so like one Rocket League professional player tweeted about it, and then a second, and then like 2 more a minute after that, and then it was just like,
and we were like, what is happening?
We went from like 700 Twitter followers to like 12,000 we're at right now in like a week.
Yeah.
And our player counts went from like 20 to 40 at peak hours to now like 800 in the middle of the afternoon on a weekday.
That's incredible.
And it happened like that.
It was just like the
And
couple
so-
tweets that get shared, and
And just the fact that it's been positive feedback, and of course, like everybody's got, there's negative feedback, positive feedback. The ratio of really encouraging feedback has been so exciting because it's like we know we have an audience. Like I'm not really worried about anything right now. I know that like we're gonna have a audience.
Right.
Like I don't know how big it's gonna be. I don't quite frankly care all that much. We're making a game that we wanted to play, and we know that we like playing it, and we know that we have a really passionate group of people in our community who love playing it. We've got guys who just found the game last week who are screenshotting pictures of like they're at the 200-hour mark.
whoa.
And it's like they got it like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it's like, oh my god! Like,
Yeah.
we were worried about the tail on it too. Like, is it going to
Yeah.
be something people come back to?
And we were also worried about the obviously the gameplay is fairly simple, so we're always really focused on trying to make sure that the
Depth is
skill
in the
cap
skill.
is as high as it can be.
Okay.
And so we were worried, like, are we always going to be the best people in the world at this game? And everyone is just going to eventually like equal us because there's just not that. We're now
It's not that deep of a skill
awful
curve.
at the game compared to
we
like
were
the
worried
people
there's
that picked
people
it
out
up
there.
2 weeks ago, and especially like some of these like
Oh,
pro
we're
Rocket
not
League
even
competitors.
we're not
Right.
even competitive.
Yeah, we were like, okay, well, like skill
we'll
game
have guys,
confirmed. I
we'll
guess.
got guys who will come in and like beat on us, and we're like, I don't even understand what I could be doing differently to like
Right.
challenge him.
Right.
And then like they'll send us videos of them getting beat like 3-0 to people.
Yeah,
and it's
right.
like I love the gap so wide because it means that there's these tiers here.
Yeah.
And that means that our skill-based matchmaking is going to work. It means that like when we start filtering people into competitive tournaments based on their skill, it's going to be fun for different groups of people. And the fact that like we're at IndieCade and people like, oh, like this is my roommate, he doesn't really game, or oh, my kids don't really game, or my wife doesn't really game, and they all sat there on Disc Jam playing doubles, having a blast, being like, I haven't played a game, I don't really play games, but this is so fun. Like we have these people
so
who are
awesome.
like pro gamers who are enjoying it, and we have this gamut all the way back to people who are like as casual as can be, like
'cause at
only play phone
at the end of the
games.
day, it's one stick and like 4 buttons.
Yeah, we
And
wanted to
that's
make it arcade style. Like I
yeah.
remember growing up, it's like you would go to a marquee, all the mechanics were on the marquee. That's how this game works. All right. It's not to say those games aren't complex, that their complexity is in the depth of the skill. It's not about
Exactly. Well, and it's like it was like going back to what I was kind of referencing with Battlefield 1. It's like it was a simplification of the grander, bigger games like Call of Duty or modern. But it's there. I like that because then it challenges you to just make do with what you have, and you really comes down to just how good you
you
understand.
can polish the
those-
design a lot.
Yeah. And you also, it takes away some of the element of like, oh, I must be losing because of like these meta choices I made in the menu. And now it's more about like, I clearly got beat there. I need to be doing better,
Yeah.
right? And there's
Yeah.
like, there's something really
Technique
fun
and
about
ability
that.
to just like read the field.
And we've done some like
is-
really radical gameplay like changes to our whole eco. Like we changed how the supers get charged up. We changed how the lob mechanic. There's only 2 buttons for throwing. It's like throw straight, throw lob. We completely rewrote lobs like 3 weeks ago because like there was just we know what like our key design pillars are, and if we find something that's like not quite in them yet, it's like, what, this really doesn't fit. And then like we were in a car ride down to like some event, and we were like just talked it over, had a really long chat about ways the design should ship, and then like surprise guys, lobs are completely different now.
Yeah.
And, like, we had people be like curse us out and leave the game.
Wow.
They're like, you broke this forever. I'm not buying. Just uninstall. Done for life. And like they would be like our like earliest adopters.
Sure.
Like they were day one guys.
Yeah.
But again, it's like when you have the majority of your feedback is positive, including your hardcore community, besides that that 1 or 2 people who leave, it's like, okay, we made the right decision here because like it's a lot cleaner product now. And I think we're down to like there's like 1 or 2 things that are not quite like perfect in the way that we had them. Everything else is like pretty much airtight in our design, and we're very proud of that because like the polish of the design is there.
Yeah.
Now our biggest challenge is honestly, now that we are so far from top tier, is just tuning it and getting it in that space.
It doesn't break it for them.
Right.
'Cause
And
I can't compete
so
the
we're
way
like
they
super
Right.
thankful that we have these guys and they're organizing tournaments and we're playing at a really high level and we get to watch that and see and
That's
they're fine.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And
And
So
that
helpful.
community is building naturally on its own just based on those things. And like you said, you're going to get those people no matter what. So you're taking the approach of whatever more people are agreeing with, that's fine.
And like I said, we have no idea what the scope of the game is going to be. We just know based on this recent surge of like the last week and a half, is that we'll have a decent market. Like this is something that a good enough amount of people want that we're like, all right.
and
well,
this is the whole point as well, because it's just the 2 of us, right? That it's super important to us to find these things because then it's like now that we know these people are there, we don't have to spend so much time trying to figure out how we're going to get the game out there as much as just making sure the game's really good
Right.
And
for
ready
these
for
people
them.
that we already
Right.
know want to play at this very competitive level.
Right.
So
We had a
it
combined
totally
audience.
changes our focus
We had
to
these-
just being able to finish it
We
up.
had
which
these
is
people
great.
pick it up and do all release videos, and these are some of like the biggest streamers and YouTubers in the world. and being pretty naive and ignorant to the whole the whole ecosystem. I mean, like we had a combined audience of what ended up being like 19 million like followers and viewers between these like handful of people.
And most of this,
and those videos dropped within 2 days of each other.
That's amazing. And you're getting this, a lot of the stuff you guys are sharing on Twitch and other places as far as like exposure, like, cause you guys mentioned earlier, I believe you're getting in, it's Twitch streams with gamers, right? Are you guys involved in these things at all?
Well,
as far as like gameplay?
I mean, we're not really doing anything. The only thing we're doing officially is that we're sort of doing our dev stream, which we do weekly, and we just sort of catch people up, chat with the community. And we have like our Discord is really active. So we have everyone in a Discord. And then that's where we talk about like suggestions and like people
roll out patches
and announcements and stuff like that.
Dialogue on it.
And then we have our Twitter, which is like the more like official news messaging. But then other than that, right, people are just what's really different from like working at Treyarch is that there's no barrier to like someone's playing our game and I can just go jump in their Twitch chat and like talk to them about it, right? So like we'll just jump in and like they'll be playing and then like Disc Jam Game, we'll just start talking to them and they're like, oh, like are you the developers? Right? And we can be like, yeah, and answer some of the questions I heard them wondering. Right. And then it turns into a longer conversation and like sometimes that's great. And
like on Beam, for example, we were like the #1 game on Beam like 4 or 5 nights in a row. And
dude, that's awesome.
I'll jump in there because those guys are all so warm and welcome, and they all like all the Beam streamers have this really tight knit community amongst themselves.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And so like in the very beginning of this, when again we had like 20 to 40 players tops, anybody who was playing Disc Jam, we were on it. Like we need to just support, see if they have any questions, tell their friends, let them know that it's all free, let them know that the beta is out there for anybody to get, and just like cultivate. And now it's like we can focus more on the game because we have so many evangelists now who are just like, just found this game, it's rad, here's the link.
That's awesome.
Just being like dethroning Minecraft from Beam Microsoft service from the #1 game is really exciting.
Dude,
I took so many screenshots of like, look at this.
That's a huge milestone.
Oh, absolutely.
And you guys are it's in beta, available on Twitch. It's on your site. You can find the beta.
discjamgame.com. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see where you enter here.
So before I forget, and because we can talk about all this, I could keep going, but or let you guys talk about it.
We don't stop rambling.
I appreciate the passion. I really do. In the on the creative side. So as far as ZBrush is concerned and where it fits into this, you guys are. So Timothy, you're creating all the assets. You're doing all the sculpting, all the modeling, and you're taking that from ZBrush. To you guys are going to Unity or
Unreal Engine 4.
Unreal Engine 4. That's right. Okay, so Unreal Engine 4. So as far as like the pipeline, like, what do you find? What has your experience been with ZBrush using it as in this way to create these assets?
Like I said earlier, my whole thing is just about let's iterate. Like I'm a big believer in the iterative pipeline. One of your guys is great instructor. He's not one of your guys, but he does amazing stuff for ZBrush. It's Michael Pavlovich.
Oh yeah,
did a GDC talk about this, and I freaked out when I saw how quick his pipeline was.
Yeah.
When it's like he just keeps it all in Dynamesh and does a full character in Dynamesh, auto UV, auto retope, auto rig in engine, and then shows it side by side with the finished asset and how good it is. And I was like, this is the answer. Like it just needs to be as iterative as possible, non-destructive as possible. So my whole thing is non-destructive and like just, for example, like this net we're looking at in the background here is a really good example of that because I knew we just, it's a 2x4 sitting in the middle of the court. Like, it doesn't need to be, but if you go like right up close into it, there's all this intricate detail in there. And we drop our camera down low for a lot of the cinematography stuff we're going to be doing.
Yeah.
And it's like, everything you're seeing there from like the bumpers and the sides are all just Z modeler, like hard surface stuff.
Yeah.
As well as like, just like, I was like, Jay, I'll get that to Jay in 10 seconds. I won't texture it. I'll just like, here's the shape, here's the size, here's what fits the space. I want like a nice little futuristic bevel on it because all this stuff is like future tech. And does this work for you? Yes or no? This little thing covers the camera here. That thing doesn't work there. Why is this taller than the player? Why is it shorter than the player? And boop, 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 boop. Then it's in there, right proportions, right shape. Then Jay's back to work building the game, and I'm just, let's polish this look as much as I can.
So like as far as because like you said, I can see the attention to detail, especially with the edge work. Like you'll go through and you'll maybe bump out some of those edges. If you throw it in there real quick.
You catch those lights right there.
Yeah, like I can see the rim light bouncing off of all these little edges, and you're probably paying attention to that from this perspective, trying to figure out what works best from that angle.
Because it's really
you're not
easy to
going
be,
in-
it's so easy to be like focused on the thing you're making,
Exactly.
not realizing the camera's back here with a crazy FOV because there's all the gameplay action in it. So like getting things that read well, especially with these side bumpers, because like you can hopefully tell the side bumpers are these like panels that are sitting in their little casing, and you know, they're see-through, but they have their own little rubbery grips on them. When you're in this FOV, it's really tough to make those read, you know. So just getting those things sorted out, like
you're seeing because it's tapering out of perspective.
Exactly.
You're sort of
because it's
getting
parallel
those-
with the camera.
and they turn on these dominoes, but we want them to like read as individual things because
Right.
we're going to start rewarding the player
It
for
definitely
hitting.
does. I mean,
If you get the ones that are closer to the end zone, you get more kind of like a call out for like
Right.
those are the harder shots to track. If you can get one, if you hit the very very back pylon, it's an easier shot to track. Those kind of things.
Yeah.
It has to read individually, and so getting those things sorted out happens in a very much iterative way. It just be like get the base geo in, find out why it doesn't work, what, you know, like someone who's never seen this art piece, what does he think about it? And like he's like, hey, this kind of feels weird because of this reason. Getting those things in there as fast as possible. So like the best thing about what I do in the pipeline is that, and I think my pipeline's pretty like quick. It's certainly not as quick as the fastest out there, and people who are you know the TAs who run their entire pipeline this way. But you know, at Activision, I would pick the brains of our artists all the time.
Yeah.
And I'd be bringing up stuff that they'd never heard of, right? Like I'd be like, so like, you know, like, do you like just do this? I don't do any of the retoup, and they're the ZBrush guys.
Yeah,
they don't
they're
touch any of the
just
retoup
sculpting.
stuff.
They're just sculpting
And you know, they'll always be a million times a better sculptor than I'll ever be because that's their craft, and they will always like. I'm gonna be a jack of all trades, master of none in my career. I'm kind of resigned myself to that because like. There's no way to practice enough to be as skilled as I would like to be in each discipline. However, I'm a gameplay developer first and foremost. Like I spent 10 years as an engineer. Like I want to be better at the craft of making games than I want to be at the craft of sculpting. Like eventually it's like if I digest all this, I can be as fast as I need to be to make really good games. That's like really kind of my goal.
Yeah.
So when I'm doing these things, like my pipeline rips pretty quick. Like we don't waste any of this work because as soon as something's signed off on, everything that I've built it as, I can now do final UV and maximize my texture space and not have to worry about like, you know, am I throwing away an hour of doing proper UVs because this didn't end up working in the end? We already have the color palette. We already have like the materials. I've already got it. So it's like the rubber and the metal and the glass all meet and make sense. And it's not too much of one thing. All those dumb little things that you usually don't find out until final polish, we find out as early as possible.
Yeah.
And then because I can one-click UV, because I can like, I might have my final texture be 512, but if I can one-click UV at 1K and know that the art's going to look as it will when I do final polish, then it doesn't matter because I already know all this stuff's going to work. And like some of the stuff might even ship in its second stage. And usually we try to get to third or fourth stage with things.
Right.
But if it ships in the second stage and we hear zero complaints about it, then I'm gravy.
Then it's
you know?
fine.
What's your so you're sort of like he's working on all these things, and then you're sort of confirming or checking, giving like an
Building
additional
it.
eye.
Yeah, and also we don't have it in this picture here, but in the net now, and actually in a lot of pieces in our geometry, we have a lot of
Is
it.
it in the screenshots? Those are pretty.
Yeah, it might be. I don't know. If you scroll down a little bit, but
because we have some screenshots. They're also
like
pretty-
we have a lot of
get some
interactive
better
elements.
images to see some of this stuff.
our media here.
No, it's not in there.
Is it
is terrible.
is it in the trailer?
I mean, if you could just like YouTube search Disc Jam probably, and we'll find
you-
a much
okay,
more
if
up
you-
to
that's
date
actually
media.
true.
But
Disc Jam.
So many people have been putting up content.
yeah, I mean,
just
there's
do,
like great content. If it's not by us, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you just search Disc Jam. But basically, we have a lot of elements in our environment, especially because we don't have any HUD. Like I was saying, we don't have any UI.
Yeah.
H2O Delirious just did one. And
Yeah.
500,000 views, and that came out 2 days ago.
Right,
That's
it's
amazing.
insane.
Yeah. So like it's insane how much.
And so we have a lot of interactive elements.
This game is
and
out
any
of
of those
control.
is-
Feel free to click any of them.
Yeah, any
These
of those
all
is probably
new,
good.
Awesome stuff.
You can turn down the volume probably if you want.
The advertisements.
But
Business plan.
What is up, guys? Welcome to Disc Jam. This is a new game, which is like, what do you even call it? Tennis, squash, Super Bowl.
But yeah, like things
So-
like this, like the scoreboard, that little pylon thing right
Yeah.
there.
right, so you can see in the center of the net there, right, which wasn't in the other photo. We've got that. We've got the score there, and
You
we've
can
got
mute this guy as well.
Yeah, you can.
Like deflect it, you can curve it.
He's just mind blown.
Lower left there, you can click the little speaker.
Ooh. You get perfect. Yeah.
There you go.
Right, perfect. So you can see that there's like a lot of interactive elements, right? The scoreboard in the back there is dynamic based on everything that's going on.
Yeah.
You've got the piece in the middle of the net. We also have like a Twitch stream integration that like viewers can vote on the outcome of stuff,
that's
and that shows
awesome.
up on the left and the right.
It'll actually show up in the environment too.
Yeah, so it
Okay.
shows up and shows you the number of votes, and it's all like part of the court. And you can see, for example, also the lights on the track below the bumpers on the sides sort
Yeah.
of track the ground position of
I
the
just
disc.
noticed that they're following.
Which is like one of a lot of things we do to try to help with depth perception. But the point being, though, that there's a lot of interactive elements to our materials. So one of the things that's really great about the pipeline is that he can be working on stage 2, 3, 4 of something, but I
Yeah.
can already have it in game, and I can be working on those interactive materials.
Right.
And so I can do a lot of the shader development for the pieces that aren't going to get baked in. Which is really useful, so that keeps us working in parallel rather than like being
the scoreboard's a
bottlenecked.
great example of that. Not the one in the middle that says like the current point
you're talking
value,
about the one in the
but the one in the
back.
back, because
Yeah.
like that thing in the middle is dynamic, so you can have any number of sets. So that like
Right, like it's divided
this is
twice
best
right
out of
now.
2 out of
So
3.
there's
Okay.
and the first person to 2 sets wins. But
What is the two? So the disc goes past the goal line. There's like two laser
so, like,
blasts.
exactly.
That shoot down?
I don't know why I wanted this, but I just always kind of envisioned
that.
these like rail guns.
Yeah.
That blasted if it ever crossed into the end zone, it would blast it out of the sky.
Yeah.
And there's little tubs in the middle that the discs will kind of cycle out of indefinitely. Like they're all connected to the ground, and that's actually like probably a stage 2 prop at the half court there.
Okay.
And then like it would feed you the disc, and they just get blown into pieces and kind of go away, and then like
Right.
out comes another one, right? So like that's just kind of, and so there's little rail guns. That's actually the prop in the back, and we're gonna put more lights back there because you can't really see it right now. But the prop in the back is like this kind of intricate sort of like turret rail gun. And that was one that's probably in like stage 4, where it's like the first thing I did was just like that big circular
Yeah.
thing with a ball at the top.
Yeah.
And that was like the first video we saw had that like giant, gnarly, gross, and that was like literally, I want to say 3 minutes in ZBrush.
Wow.
It was just like cylinder.
Z modeler or
Yeah. Because like, there's like, I want a nice little cute base.
Yep.
Tall and slender, little coil wrap around it, ball at the top.
Yeah.
And that's what we used for like Indiecade. And the first 6 months of the project was like this pylon. Not a single person complained about it, but I knew I wanted to have, for one, like you'll notice how the head on the pylon is just at camera height. See how it's like just at the very tip of the camera?
Yeah.
I wanted to sit right above the neck of the other wall plates. So like that was important to me because it's going to be shooting these cool lasers. I wanted to be right there. So I made it kind of a short studded thing. It can hit any angle. It can like rotate straight down, hit right in front of it. And hit anywhere on the court the disc is, the lasers can shoot them out of the sky.
Okay.
So all those kind of things I just knew in this dumb little fictional world we're spinning up here. Like we knew we kind of had some like kind of like light ideas of what would be cool in having
Right,
there.
but you're kind of developing those things. That's so awesome that you just try it out and you get it in there
Exactly.
as fast as
That's the
possible.
key. Like
Yeah.
finding something
without
that works
holding yourself
in
to
5
any
minutes.
rules. You're just
Yes.
like, let's try this.
And I think that's a pretty new thing. I don't see a lot of
Yeah.
pipelines that work in that fashion. And like,
I haven't seen any.
Like that's the kind of thing that I think super exciting because like we can build the code to run it while I'm doing. It'll take Jay 5 minutes to write the code to make that thing pivot the way it does, and it'll take me 5 minutes to put the block out with no texture in the map. And then it's like, okay, here's the railgun. How's it going to be? Oh, you know what? It doesn't work if the disc is like 90 degrees this direct. I was like, oh shit. Okay, let's revisit how this design works. And then when we've waste as little work as possible. That's like the key to our whole pipeline is a 2-man studio releasing a game like on PC and PS4, publishing ourselves, and doing everything in house. The key is that we waste as little work as possible, and that's a big part of our art pipeline is that. And so like I was saying about the scoreboard
everything's
in the back.
designed around not having to throw away work later, right? So the earlier that we can figure out something doesn't work in stage 1, where he's just auto retobed everything, is like great. And then
And
it's
like
like
that
he's
scoreboard in the
lost
background.
I love the
example
ragdoll.
of-
It's just so great. I'm dead.
That's something that we get a lot of positive feedback
It's so
on.
awesome. It's such a great, like, I think it's an understated like element in a game when you have a character just.
Well, Jay called it the cheapest trick in game day, and like,
Yeah,
and
we
he, was,
had-
he had a disagreement
This
on
is
that.
the only thing that I think we disagreed on in the project.
I wouldn't say that. It was one that had a longer conversation than it probably
But
merited.
that's what I mean. This is one of the only things that we had a longer conversation than needed to, which
Yeah.
was that like
Jay
I
was
was like,
super
I don't know. So before
I was like, it's
before
gotta
we
be-
had these ragdolls, like they were totally pre-canned death animations.
Okay.
And
can
well, it's
actually
not really
see them,
death,
yeah.
but it's like knockdowns.
Yeah, unconscious anims.
And so we had like a bunch of different ones for different scenarios and stuff like that. And I thought they looked really good. And Tim really wanted to do ragdolls because, for obvious reasons, I mean, being that they're sort of comical and they add like I think the major gain is that it adds something that's dynamic and makes the point feel a little bit different in something that is normally like pretty rigid set of rules and stuff like that. And so it's really fun at the end of the point now where you can like see them
standing there like, I lost the point.
Right.
And that's it. Yeah.
Right. It's like something fun.
And we
It's
had
like,
some,
you know,
like you said, like we had some cool animations for getting blown back, like that one right there. But now we just like play the first few frames of it and turn on the ragdoll in between it. Like, so we had some nice animations that looked okay, but you can only see the same it's directional. So you can only see the same 4 animations so many times where it's tired anyway.
Yeah. That's a good point. Well, I mean, there's so many questions that I want to ask about like character development, for example, as far as coming up with the designs and the theme for all of this. Did you spend a lot of time doing research? Because how many characters do you have total in the game?
We're gonna ship with 4, and we got the 4th one coming out soon. There's 3 in the game now. And
Kyle, can you look up, see if you can find a like character customization video? I saw the one that we looked at earlier showed an awesome sculpt, like one of the bigger bulky
the
guys,
barbarian dude is the one. So like he's actually
accessories
gonna come. He's gonna come back post ship because his model is by far the most complete. Like his model was like. It's been through a lot of iterations. He's very intricate. He's got a ton more just bits and bobs all over him. He's like a really, and he's got dynamics in like his little kilt and like his pads and his shoulder blade. It all has like different dynamics in them. So like, where do you want to go?
Just see if you can look up.
I think our trailer has it in there, does it? I'm trying to think the last place he was seen.
Play that trailer again. See if you can go to on their website, play that trailer. But at some point in there is the character customization part.
It's like midway through or so.
But anyway, so like, you know, if you ever played like Mario sports games, we knew we wanted to have that sort of the character archetype is defined more than the character. So it's like the big slow guy, the fast and skilled.
It's like I pick Yoshi because he's kind of like in between.
It's gonna have
Yoshi, Mario, Luigi are like they're level.
So you know, just going back to being gameplay first, that was like our goal was that. Our goal was 100% about we wanted to make sure that the read was a 1-note read. This is that archetype.
Yeah.
So like the next character we're doing is this ninja called Haruka, who's like
here we go.
Here, this guy.
Yeah. So like I mean, dude, the level of detail for these characters. I love that this is what I love. That this is so awesome for me, just because you're doing like high quality character work, but then it gets down res a little bit because of the perspective, but it's all still there.
Right.
And you have both. It's
so
like the best
we
of both
love
worlds.
that because we get a lot of good feedback in the character customization menu because people love sitting in there and dressing them up.
Yeah.
But also, we're going to push that as far as we possibly can. Like we're going to go.
So you guys want to take that further?
We want to go accessories. We want to go like just for ship. It's going to be pretty vanilla. But our goal is to make that as these kind of paper dolls that can get so much more kind of tailored to your own like vibe.
Right.
Because people are going to gravitate to the player who plays the gameplay they want to play.
Yeah.
Then if they want to dress it up like, let's make this character actually more like this barbarian, crazy lunatic look, or it's like more of like a pro wrestler kind of stylish guy.
Yeah.
You know, whatever it's going to be, we want to give them all those options. And so that's like kind of what we want to do is just keep that as open world as possible. So you asked about the concepts. The concepts are all just about that sort of like open almost role more than they are the personality themselves. We don't waste time on setting. We don't waste time. Where is this arena? It's like that doesn't matter to us. Like we have some concept. It's an arcade game.
Gameplay arcade aspect of it.
It's a game. It's an arcade game.
Yeah, I mean the environment I think only went through like 2 or 3 iterations. It was like, you know, we had
Future American Gladiators.
Right. We were like, that was sort of like
Gladiators. It's so good.
Yeah. We had like, okay, we knew it was going to be like some sort of futuristic setting. We knew we wanted to do this sort of clay court thing.
Yeah.
We thought that'd be a good color scheme. We also wanted to do the stuff on the core where it's sort of like where you're pushing the clay around, I think looks good. And it was like, you know, we went through a couple iterations, like on the wall plates, for example, you know, like, we had stuff that were like much more solid and chunkier looking at the beginning, when we were first doing the look development. And it was like, that was one of the early places where we were like, okay, something's not working here. We didn't know exactly what it was. I was giving him a lot of crap for it.
Yeah.
It was like too industrial.
Yeah.
I
was like, I feel like I'm playing Disc Jam in like the Death Star like trash compactor.
Right. Because this has that, like you have the transparent elements. You have fences, you have posts, but there's space between.
It's more like a high end kind of like, and it's like a racquetball court in the future almost.
Right.
With like
and
lasers.
I can see it like it bounces off and they spin or they deflect the disc.
Yeah. I
There's
think
actually
like going a lot
example.
skinnier with it, and the transparency I think was ultimately really important because you felt less boxed in, right? You can see through it. You get like what's going on outside the court,
right?
And, as opposed to just feeling like you got these like this tunnel you're in.
Yeah, it's like watching like a professional.
And this is actually a great example of like our iterative pipeline because like super non-destructively, like what I was saying in the beginning of the interview, we have this mannequin that I was building the animations on. And we knew we wanted McKenna to be like a skinny sort of like army girl. Like she's like this sniper military persona.
Yeah, I get that.
So,
I read that.
Like, you know, that comes in a bit of her like just nimbleness but like like the proportions were all out of whack. And because legit was like, I have my mannequin, I dynameshed it.
Yeah.
I retoped it, and then I put the armor on top.
I'm starting to see it now.
You can see it, yeah, like her legs,
for sure.
and then her arms don't bend
it's
the
so
right
subtle.
way. Yeah, but it's like
it's whatever.
It's just one of those things where it's
Minor
like,
detail.
it didn't matter because we needed to get the second gameplay online, and like as opposed to me spending final polish, and she's actually her polish pass I'm pretty much finishing up right now. That's been like 6 to 8 months where I didn't touch her because it was more important that we get our third character stood up, and then like he's actually a lot farther along because we knew his look was finalized early.
Yeah.
And the art and the animation came out later anyway for him. So it's like she's getting her polish pass. I'm gonna check in the new model for her like in the next few days here. But like it was very, very critical to us to be able to like stand her up, get her in game. I don't care what it looks like. Her animations are on there. She's playable. Go. Like, what do you think, guys?
The fact
You
that
got
that wasn't
feedback.
blocking the pipeline is absolutely massive.
That's the key. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, I have a million questions. Like, I want to get to asking questions for the ZBrush nerds, but I don't want to take away from a part of what all this is about is you guys are going to be you guys are going to be showing all of these things on Twitch, right? So your whole pipeline, all of these things that you're how you're using ZBrush and how you're implementing it with Unreal, and that whole process of basically from start to finish with the character, you guys are doing. So I'd like to leave those things for people to tune into Twitch,
Sure,
and get as much traction as possible for people to not miss out on that because. We're super excited to see you guys utilizing ZBrush in a way that you're hitting it in all cylinders. You're not just using it as organic. You're doing hard surface, using ZModel or Dynamesh, you probably Nanomesh or other kinds of things, when you can make use of it, but only in a practical sense when you need it. Which is awesome to hear that ZBrush is giving you guys a chance to make
I mean, one of my
stuff.
favorite things about all of our entire library of content is when we do the custom discs because it's like the thing that I can do front to back in ZBrush the most of. Like I do all of the hard surface because the discs are round and there's a lot of curves and stuff there. So I do all the hard surface for all of our discs in ZBrush, and then with like the way I handle ZModeler and auto UVing and doing where I do my bevels and how I do my bevels, it's just like. It's almost entirely procedural workflow where it's like I can get my concept on paper and then from that concept I can have a brand new disc in the game so quick. So I'll be doing a lot of that in the ZBrush stream on your guys' Twitch channel. I'll be doing a lot of we'll do full discs from front to back into the game and throw them around an engine like that day. And it's like that's the really fun bit.
And that's the kind of stuff you guys are going to be getting into.
And those are final
stream.
UVs. That's not even like a quick
UV master.
Yeah, I mean that's like UV master to the point where I don't need to just do it because it's one click and it's in game so I can test. It's like I will get my final geo out of this because of how I've orchestrated my islands with the bevels and the hard and the hard corners, hard edges. So it's like it becomes so fast to be like, oh, we have like a really cool concept for a disc because we're gonna get pretty silly with that too. Like we have one that's like it's just like wood and nails and it's like a junkyard disc. We have some that one of them's like a more futury Tron disc. That's the one I think I sent you guys via email. And then we have like just anything in between because it's a silly arcade game. It's meant to be just sort of out there. We want to do like a plate of food, like a steaming hot
that's a great idea.
Like a turkey leg and mashed potatoes and like peas. And it's just like just anything kind of silly, but as long as it's like not breaking the gameplay, like it's in. We're doing all that kind of stuff. So.
Well, we appreciate you guys coming in to talk about this, and I can't tell you how excited we are to get this ZBrush Live thing going because it's new for us, and these are all the things that we want to share with the bigger community, and you guys are living the dream right now, getting to do whatever you want to do, and being fully in control. So for the people that are interested in the technical side, what you guys are doing, February 6th, we're going to be launching. ZBrush Live officially. The site is up. If you go to, you could probably close that if you want to. But ZBrush Live is going to be our hub that has all of our shows like this. So we're going to have Z Plays. We're going to have you guys and all kinds of other representatives, people from different walks of life or, different styles of art maybe or different ways of using ZBrush. But you guys are going to be showing all this stuff in detail.
Oh, yeah.
So all that stuff's going to be.
Yeah, it's a big part of our pipeline, man. We couldn't live
yeah.
without it, honestly. It's key to us being able to be as quick as we can be, and that's really about 100% what our goals are.
That's so awesome to hear. I'm just glad that you guys are able to achieve the things that you want and,
couldn't live without
get
it.
to that result.
Absolutely true. Could not live without it. I couldn't. There's some tools in my pipeline that I went away tomorrow, I'd be fine, and I don't know anything I could replace my ZBrush workflow with. There's organic modelers out there. There's sculpt tools out there, of course. But as far as like being like basically the idea factory there's nothing else like it. Where it's like whether it's the early stage where just shaping things and getting base mesh stuff, or just like detail phase, or just hardcore like hey let's polish and get this like finished. Every step of that process, I just couldn't live without it. I wouldn't be able to do what I do without it.
That's cool. I mean, that's the way I think ZBrush is sort of developed into that way where it's intended to be used in all kinds of ways. And all people, it's a million ways you can do stuff in ZBrush, and it's just a matter of what works best for you.
Yep.
And so I guess with that said, is there anything that you wanted to share or throw up here before we?
No, I mean, we've kind of
promote
went through all of our stuff. I mean, like I said, you can get our free beta right now. It's at discjamgame.com.
Okay.
And other than that, you know about the dev stream. They know we're going to be coming on your guys' stream. So other than that, I mean.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So February 6th, all that information, you'll be able to find all that stuff here on this page. You can see the countdowns there, but you can click on the Get Notified button, which will basically allow you to type in your email address. The Get Access is similar, but it allows you to get prizes, stuff like that. There's additional benefits from the Get It. It's everything. So either one of those, if, we're not going to spam you with, sales and marketing stuff. It's all related to just content like this. So if you want to learn about ZBrush, learn more about these guys, all that stuff is going to be there. So keep an eye on this. And, before I forget, we got you guys a couple of gifts.
Oh, nice.
ZBrush hats.
Oh, yeah,
That's
dude.
awesome.
Nice.
These are actually retired, by the way, so these will no longer be available. These are
limited
collector's
edition.
items. Limited edition.
Look at that.
That's what I'm
Dad
talking
ZBrush
about.
hats.
Nice.
I like to call these dad hats, which
Because the Velcro?
yeah, well, because they're like the there's
They
the new
sit
era
high.
fit that's like the crown, which I like those, but these are
With
like
the flat brim?
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm actually better with dad hats.
yeah, I'm starting to come around to dad hats.
Because
the
like
older I get.
the new era hats, like they sit so high on my head. 'Cause I got kind of a big head, so dad hats work better for me anyway.
Oh,
Thanks,
there you
guys.
go, man. Of course, man. I'm glad you guys.
Yeah.
Glad you guys like it, and the only thing I'm upset
Sorry
about.
for rambling.
No, please. Rambling is good. You guys are.
We could wax about this game dev stuff forever. It's like,
Yeah.
Trust me, I was gonna nerd out about Nazi zombies and World Wars, but I try to refrain from it because that.
I'll give you a funny story about that. One dude, or like 3 dudes, I think, were just like, we need to do this. Like, did it in secret and like spun it up complete. And, like, now zombies is what it is. But like, zombies came about by like a few guys had an idea and like did not tell anybody.
What?
Worked on it in off hours.
me more.
and
Like,
just-
they like worked on it outside of office hours because they didn't want to get in trouble because they're responsible for it. So
Yeah.
like during a long work day, like everybody would go home, they would like close a door and like build it by themselves in private, and then like, they finally showed it. Like, hey, like this is pretty cool, right? And then like that's how like zombies
Kingsley.
became a thing. Yeah. Now zombies is like a third of the building
Dude,
probably.
Yeah.
It
awesome.
it was the thing that kept me on Call of Duty. Like I was only getting Call of Duties in it was like every other one, right? I think it was Activision was doing the Nazi zombies, right? Because then there was Infinity Ward who did modern.
Yeah, Treyarch was
was
doing
Black Ops,
the off years, and
Yes.
Infinity Ward did
Sister Studios.
Call
Yep.
of Duty 2,
so I was
then
kind of
Modern Warfare.
leapfrogging to each
Right.
one.
Now there's 3.
Yeah, and World at War was, dude, such a big one for me. It was like the first level, and what's so great about it is like one of my best friends back home. We had like a pretty good core group of Nazi zombie players, and I was in school in film and animation here, and I would get on it was the best timing because they would be on. I would be on at like midnight or 1, and they'd like my couple buddies who were dedicated would play till like 6 in the morning. So we'd go all night, and we'd have like systems where we would swap out, and like we had this whole mechanical like way of thinking about it and
That's
try
Horde
and
does,
survive as long as possible. And it was so great because
That's
it would
awesome.
continue
That is
to.
awesome.
It would continue to. My favorite one. Did you guys ever play? Oh, I'm sure you did. Shangri-La. With the bridge.
Yep.
Dude, we had 4-man team. We would line up on the bridge, and you'd have 2 guys in front. One was crouched down, one was up. And you'd have to get the light machine guns with the upgraded class from the machine.
Yeah.
And then you would basically like rotate around. So if one guy had to Like one guy was lead. When he had to reload, the other guy stepped forward. That guy would reload, and then you would swap back and forth.
It's like that's what I love about like Call of Duty, sure, like formulaic, sure, and like a lot of repetition from title to title. But like when you talk about like
Survival.
campaign is campaign, and it has its goals and its intentions are to tell this like epic story, and they put a lot of work into like making sure there's good writing and like good voice acting and good cinematic moments and art for that. And like MP is MP, it's got to be like this like distilled competitive environment, and like you have zombies that comes along, and like it's like horde mode theory crafting where you guys are all like strategizing what's the most efficient way to dispatch of like these like mindless things that they're not super complicated in the combat, but like in the sort of horde v us, how can we maximize how we dispatch them in a way that like it's just, that's so cool, because then you're developing game theory around like optimization. It's like what's actually happening, and it's like a whole new layer of game. Like
it was real. It was so realistic for me because the strategy was it's all you had, because you only have so much. You only have access to so many weapons, and there's only so much ammo you can do, and so much ammo. So it always came down to ammo. And we had 3 Alamo points. There was one last, so you'd go from one point when it would get to about round like 40 or 50. That was where we had to leave the bridge and you have to go to the next spot. And then you would get to the next spot and then you get overrun no matter what. Then you have to go to the final one. And the final one was like, whoever survives has to just get around as much as possible. And it would always come down to trying to get that last, the max ammo. And the max ammo would always come at specific times until it didn't at all. And then you'd just be screwed, and you'd be like running around the last guy and everybody else is watching you play, and you're just like, we had a system where you had to fight. The whole goal was to get them in a line. That's why we did the bridge, because they're all filing down, and it's all about headshots, and you take out as many as you can. But eventually, like the bullets stopped working, so it's like we couldn't get past 60. It was like 60 or 60 in the 60s range.
Well, you make a lot of people's. I know there's a lot of people in that building whose day you're making.
Dude, I love
telling
him.
How much you like.
I love him, man. I love him. I could talk about it all day, and I still like reminisce. The last one I got to was the last one I played was the I think it was Black Ops 2. Where they had the town where you could take the bus through different depots.
Yeah, that was a huge technical achievement, by the way, because the bus,
was incredible.
The way the bus works is what's like called like essentially like, it's like they're not
having people on something that's moving
does not like happen in Call of Duty very often, and that's
true.
A technological thing. That
I can only
friggin'
imagine.
bus
Was it a
almost
nightmare?
burned the whole company down.
Everybody's upset about the bus. Well, I appreciated the bus, and I appreciated the banking system and storing money and like. Dude, it's
just cool because like it became again like it started off as like 3 guys, and then it became a whole wing of the game. Like I said in the beginning, like MP used to be like 6 or 7 guys, and it became half the building. Now like and then zombies became a thing. Like now like a third of the building is just only zombies teams, and they hire for it. Like they have all different game. They have different goals, right? Their game has different goals than ours.
It's a super interesting co-op mode in general, because I think like co-op overall, I think it's like getting more popular again in terms of like people that are making games. But it's always sort of like co-op ends up going hand in hand with like go at your own pace, like the sort of Minecraft and like and like survival style, like just spend a long time with your friends building stuff. And like it's a really interesting co-op mode to have such adversarial gameplay, even though you're playing cooperatively with your friends, because it forces you to do that sort of optimization and strategy of like, it's like playing a really old, hard NES game, but like with friends. And there's something really appealing about that.
Rare.
Well, I love it. And as far as I really appreciate and respect the level of understanding that you guys have for this and the passion for it, because it really seems like you guys are dedicating the right energies in those places. So once Disc Jam is out, I can't wait to see how successful it is and what you guys do next, because it seems like you guys are you guys have some. I'm sure you have plenty of other ideas.
Oh yeah, so. The network platform works. That's the big win here that we don't actually talk about all that much. Is that Disc Jam hopefully has a little bit of success and keeps the company from going under, which I think
that was actually to your question about like one of the reasons that we decided to make Disc Jam over other things is like part of what was going along with that low scope was that there were a lot of things from an infrastructure point of view, both like pipeline and art pipeline and infrastructure in terms of back end and matchmaking and stuff that we still needed to iron out. And we thought that a project like this would be the best way to do that. And
makes sense.
I think like I'm super surprised that we've been able to get done what we've gotten done in like just a little over a year. I actually thought it would take a lot longer. But the really cool part for us is that like using tools like ZBrush and using a lot of the stuff that we've already built, we can, I think, make something else in much shorter amount of time.
Yeah,
that has a larger scope, and so that will be the interesting thing. We certainly have no shortage of ideas. Ideas are the easy part.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that the fact that we've been able to have like, a couple 100,000 of our keys reclaimed, and people we get reach outs from like the Ukraine, South America, remote, South Africa, even, and parts all over. Like we're starting to just now recently, the Pacific Rim and parts of Asia are starting to pick up keys and use Google Translate to try and get us like to answer questions for them and stuff like that. And it's just been exciting because that means our network platform is working. It means our player versus player architecture is all working, and that's exciting because this is our first game as a company. But if our multiplayer, which we each believe that's the hardest part of making games, is good MP is the hardest thing to do. That's working, and people are finding low ping matches and playing each other in a fast-paced arcade game and not complaining to us every day about lag or clunky controls. That means that like, all right, our tech is sound where we can make arcade games online now, and that's our actual goal. It's like our big picture is like we're going to be the online arcade for just accessible, deep skill games that are super just pick up and play, but deep skill curve fun games.
That's awesome to hear. I mean, dude, you guys are right. You're on the money with trying to find that niche or that thing that you guys have, and hey, just you keep using ZBrush and we'll spread the word as much as possible.
Can't live without it, so don't go anywhere.
No, it's great, man. Oh, I can't wait. And for all you listeners and everybody that's listening to the podcast, don't forget, check it out, ZBrushLive.com. These guys will be on. We'll have the schedule for when you guys are going to be on specifically, so we don't know exactly right now when. We're going to be doing some stuff on streaming on Twitch as well. But you guys and tons of other artists will be there. So if you want to learn about all this stuff and figure out how to do it or interested in it, this will be the place to go.
I'll be watching for sure.
You guys have enough information, I think, more than enough information, and are willing to share.
Well, I watch all your guys' stuff anyway. I watch everything that comes out. I subscribe to all your stuff because you never know when something just comes across the wire. Even if I see a video and Ask ZBrush, if I see an Ask ZBrush video, I go, I know how this works already. I still watch it because every now and then it's like
there's that one thing that you're like, oh, that is game changing.
Totally.
Yeah. Every little difference makes a difference, So subscribe, check it out, and thank you guys for coming in. We really
Thanks for having us. Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, see you guys next time. Sweet.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no problem.
Appreciate it, man. You guys.